Good morning. Now afternoon, I guess. Talk about punctuality, right? Right at noon. Thanks everyone for joining me. I really appreciate it. It's going to be a fun show today. I got 5 topics to get through. The 5th one's kind of going to be fun. So I thought about what order I wanted to do these, and like least aggravating to most aggravating. But I think I picked an order I think I'm happy with. So let me just start by saying thank you to all my new subscribers. I did live streams with American Joe and another panel, a Patriot panel on Monday, and I did a live stream with American Joe last night. Got me almost doubled my subscribers, so now I'm over 1,000, which means I think that means I can now mobile live stream. So look for me to be doing videos like that in the future when I go to Republican rallies and things like that. So thank you to all of you if you're my new subscribers, and thank you to the people who have been with me all along. I really appreciate it. So what's up, Dib? How's it going, man? Dib, that you see in the chat, is one of my patrons. He helped me get, if you've been here a while, you probably noticed my sound sounding better. I had a good friend of mine that donated sound equipment. People like Dib helped me get new editing programs and some new programs to help make my video and sound quality better. So link to all that in the description if you want to support me on Patreon, PayPal. If you want to follow me on BitChute or Twitter, it's on there as well. So good morning, everyone. So let's get right started with Virginia, right? So the first thing I'll say is in the description of this video is a link to my discussion with American Joe last night that was all about Virginia. So if you want to hear more of my thoughts than what I say here, you should check that out. For those of you new to my live stream, I'll probably go for 2 to 2.5 hours today. So I try to keep up with the comments. So if you have anything to say in the comments, even if you disagree with me, please let me know and I'll try to respond. So I want to hit some things I wasn't talking about last night with American Joe on the Virginia situation. The first thing is, I alluded to this, but I think it's very important to discuss, and that is, now I come from rural Pennsylvania, and I think the majority of my friends that have grown up in this area understand the importance of guns. Not just, maybe they don't understand as much about the importance of our founding fathers saying the number one reason for the Second Amendment was to prevent government tyranny. But certainly they understand the importance of guns for sporting reasons, for self-protection and things like that. For example, a lot of the people that live around here, you might be, 15, 20 minutes away from a police officer responding to a call. I did debate in university, and most of the people are from the city. Most are liberal that are in the debate community. And I remember having a debate once where someone told me, the only reason to own a gun is if you want to potentially commit some sort of crime. And I told them, and this is the truth, those of you from rural areas of the country might be in a similar situation. My neighborhood was incredibly poor. Everyone I knew owned guns to hunt. If you didn't get a deer in winter, you probably were having a difficult time eating throughout that winter. And one of the great things about the community I lived in, if you didn't get a deer that winter, your neighbor maybe got 2, they'd give you some deer meat, etc. So it's a way of life around here. And in fact, my brother-in-law and father-in-law own a gun shop where they specialize in remodeling AR-15s and things like that. Things that are above my pay grade. I'm a terrible hunter. I'm one of the worst shots you would ever see, but I do appreciate that. And I really like that culture. So I just thought that was funny that people said, but to that crowd that maybe you think, well, hey, I don't own a gun. Maybe you're afraid of guns. Maybe you just think that you don't need one for whatever reason. Therefore, you're not concerned about this situation in Virginia. You need to really think about what attacks on the Second Amendment mean. First off, the fact that you don't own a gun, you're still protected by the Second Amendment, whether it be from government tyranny, because it's difficult for an outside government to be tyrannical towards us when all of the populace may own guns, and it's certainly difficult for our current government. Now, I know you hear the Eric Swalwells of the world, and this is a common trope that you hear. Oh, but you would be outgunned. What will your rifle, what will your 30-06 do when, an Abrams tank comes down the street of your town? But that's not what will happen. Remember, our military's still made up of people that are Americans. They're not going to just tank, people that are with them. They're fellow countrymen. So what it is, as I was telling American Joe, it's an information war. And that's why we need to get the information out there about the tyranny of our government, about the corruption of the media and things like that. Because the soldiers get this too. They understand this. That's why there's way more support in the military of Donald Trump than you would have believed if you listen to the media, because they understand the corruption of places like the media, the intel community, the military industrial complex, and things like that send them in harm's way for these foreign regime change wars. So it's not just a matter of, oh, well, our guns can't compete with the guns of the military, therefore they're worthless. No, that's not true at all. Those guns protect us from the military, not just the military, but from the government infringing on our other rights as well. That's what the idea of protecting against tyranny is. So with our founding fathers, for example, there was all kinds of things that was tyrannical about the English government. For example, the housing of soldiers, posse comitatus, and things like that. That's not likely to happen in a world where everyone in a town has the right to own guns. But if you don't have that right, look what happens in the UK. And it's a story I'll be getting to, which I'll probably be screaming a little here when I get to my third topic about another grooming gang found in Manchester. A report came out. Literally, there are police in the UK, there are council people in the UK that knew for 30 plus years that thousands of girls were being raped by Muslim grooming gangs, and they did nothing. When the people spoke up and tried to protest, what did they do? They just arrested them all. Look at Tommy Robinson. So that's another reason that we need to be able to arm ourselves against this government tyranny. Look at what the FBI is doing in our country. 17 abuses just to spy on a presidential campaign that they didn't like. Now, if they could do that to Trump, what do you think they could do to you? It's clear that we need to, more than any time in my lifetime, there's an example of government tyranny almost every day. So that's the important. We see, and I keep stressing this, and I can't believe this wasn't a bigger news story. One of the highest ranking Democrats is a man by the name of Clyburn. He was on, I think, MSNBC like 3 months ago, and made a startling admission. And that was, many in the Democratic Party would be against the Bill of Rights if it was voted on today. Think of the implications of that. That's startling. I've seen polling, which, granted, if you've watched my channel enough, you know I'm very skeptical of polling. But I feel anecdotally that backs up this polling. I've seen polling that says millennials, which I think I'm the first year of millennial. I'm 35, which I feel like an old person, but I guess the millennials call me a boomer. I guess that's supposed to be an insult, which I'll be happy to be identified with that generation as opposed to the millennials. But I'm just kidding. The generational stuff's stupid. But, yeah, millennials, over 50% of them are against the First Amendment. They think that, quote, hate speech shouldn't be protected. Well, how do you define hate speech? Anything that the establishment doesn't like. Anything that the social justice warriors don't like. If you're not concerned about the Second Amendment because you think I don't have an interest in gun, are you concerned about the First Amendment? Are you concerned about the right to your free speech? Because without the Second Amendment, there is no First Amendment. And we can see that the same people that are coming after the Second Amendment are coming after the First Amendment as well. Now, let's do a thought, and not just the First, also the Fourth Amendment, your right to privacy. And all of the other Bill of Rights that you have. The rights guaranteed in the Bill of Rights. Now, let's do a thought experiment. Look at the situation in Virginia today. So we had, the governor is willing to declare, let's say, I've seen estimates anywhere from 15,000 to 100-something thousand people are going to show up. Let's go with the small estimate, 15,000 people. Most of those were probably going to open carry, which is totally legal. The government, based on nothing, Governor Northam says, oh, but there was a threat. We got a threat. You can't know what the threat is, but trust us, we got a threat. Therefore, he's willing to issue an emergency declaration like he's some sort of king that will criminalize 15,000 people. That is incredible. That's an incredible abuse. You've seen people like Swalwell. You've seen people like Beto. These aren't nobody people. These aren't just random people online like me. These are people at the head of the Democratic Party admitting, yes, they're going to take your guns. Yes, they're willing to pass laws that will criminalize millions of Americans. All in the name of fighting some boogeyman, which I'll get to in my time capsule section, why the boogeyman they're fighting, that's blown out of proportion as well, the idea of gun deaths. So let's do a thought experiment, and I've said this often, and I haven't got a good answer from the pro-gun control crowd. If you could take away, so the idea of Northam saying, an emergency declaration to suspend your Second Amendment rights, or red flag laws, which they're trying to pass in Virginia and they've passed in other states. The idea being that someone close to you could just, based on their words, you lose one of your rights in the Bill of Rights, your Second Amendment rights. No proof necessary. You're guilty until proven innocent. Isn't that a theme with the Democrats, by the way? Like, not to get off subject here, but if you remember watching my videos during the Kavanaugh saga, I said, this is it. I don't know how anyone in good conscience could ever vote for this Democratic Party again until they totally remove the leadership. Because the leadership of that party, Booker, Kamala Harris, Feinstein, all these people in the media, a bunch of other Democrats, a bunch of people in academia, all of them said that the cornerstone of our legal system, which is innocent until proven guilty, should no longer apply. They said, nope, Kavanaugh is guilty till proven innocent. That is now being applied. I said, that's it. That's the end game. You can't allow this to happen, because once you allow that to happen, once legally, and I understand people say, well, this wasn't a legal trial, but once you remove that concept, and that concept shouldn't just be applied legally. That should be applied all throughout our lives. Once you say, well, based on anyone's accusation, I'll believe anything they say. Of course, the caveat being they have to be a Democrat. They have to be one of the, cultural Marxist oppressed groups. So #believe all women. Except don't believe a woman if they're criticizing a Democrat, right? But anyways, once you get into that world of innuendo, that's the end of our country. Elections will now just be decided by who could get the best accusations at the last minute. Lives and careers will be destroyed even more than they already are based on just accusations. Look at the Covington situation. No proof necessary. They had a red hat on. They must be evil. They actually defended the black Hebrew Israelites, the black group that was yelling racial slurs at them, at these kids, who then we just saw in New Jersey, one of their members shot up a kosher deli. And the media was writing puff pieces on the black Hebrew Israelites. This is a racist group, but cultural Marxism and the social justice warriors say that's okay. Those racists are okay because the children they were yelling at had MAGA hats on, so it was okay. That's the insane world that getting rid of innocent until proven guilty leads to. It leads to accusation and innuendo. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Harmony. Appreciate it. So let's do a thought. So the idea then of red flag laws is you're guilty until proven innocent. And the argument that they'll make is, well, it's because we need to prevent these mass shootings. And therefore, the threat of you is so expansive that you might carry out such a heinous crime that we need to err on the side of caution and remove your rights. So let's do a thought experiment. If that's true about your Second Amendment right, why isn't that true about your First Amendment right? I could make the argument that any shooting that's ever occurred was premeditated or prompted by some sort of speech, some sort of thought or speech, right? Even takes heinous things like some racist shoots up a synagogue in Pittsburgh. That's near where I live, right? That was premeditated based on thoughts that he had from some sort of speech where he hated people that were at that synagogue. So therefore, based on that we know any mass shooting had to be preempted by some sort of speech. If we could suspend your Second Amendment rights and say, well, it's because the implications are so huge, the possible bad things so huge that there could be a mass shooting, why can't we do that with your First Amendment rights? In other words, if you have someone that's critical of the government, say me, say whoever, it doesn't have to be me, it could be someone on the left as well. You could have Jimmy Dore, Matt Taibbi. These are people that are critical of Trump, but they also hate the intel communities, right? They're on the left. If we could say we could strip your Second Amendment rights because we feel violence will occur if we don't, why can't they strip you of your First Amendment rights because they feel violence will occur if they don't? And we see how this will be misused. We saw it in the Kavanaugh situation. Everybody knew that this was just a political scheme. We see it in the impeachment scheme. So what makes you think they won't do that when it comes to red flag laws for guns? Look at how these social justice type people, I just read an article the other day of a woman, I believe she worked at a hotel and she had Facebook posts that were pro-Trump. And so people started like yelping or whatever, putting bad reviews on this hotel because there was a Trump supporter there until eventually she had to get fired. Stories like this occur over and over and over again. So if they're willing to do that to cease your employment, why wouldn't they be willing to lie or smear you to cease your right to own firearms? And if they're willing to do it to cease your right to own firearms, why wouldn't they do it to cease your right to speech? We already see how all of these Silicon Valley corporations are all in with the establishment. Look what they're doing to conservatives. And don't get me wrong, it's primarily conservatives. It's 90% conservatives. But if you're one of my friends on the left that are watching this, they do it to you as well. Any non-establishment person on the left, which they're few and far between, but they get censored as well. Independent content creators that are on the left, now granted, not nearly as bad as the people on the right, but we should be seeking to make allies. It's not just a left versus right battle. It's an establishment versus non-establishment battle. And you might dislike a lot of the ideas that people on the left have, but if they're against the establishment, you should try to make common ground with them where you can. That's one of the reasons, I have a lot of friends that are on the left. Most of the time, we just don't talk politics. We end up talking sports or something else stupid, maybe our love of alcohol or something like that. But you see what I'm saying here. So what's to stop them from coming and taking your First Amendment? For example, the same people are saying there's a credible threat that if Northam saying this, that if we had open carry at Virginia, that there would be some sort of threat. What's to stop them next year from saying, oh, and we heard there's going to be threats, so now we're just not going to leave the pro-gun people speak? That's exactly the type of things that happen. If we have red flag laws for firearms, why can't we, what's to stop from having red flag laws to speech? What's up, Jojo? For those of you who don't know, Jojo is my brother. Thanks for being here, man. So, even if you think, hey, I'm never going to own a gun, this doesn't affect me. It does. It absolutely does. The Bill of Rights are there for a reason. Look, I talk about this often. The reason the United States is the greatest country in the history of the world is it has the best Constitution. Because the core theme of it was focus on the individual and personal responsibility and personal liberty. Those aren't messages that are popular today. And they go hand in hand, by the way. A lot of people like the liberty, but not the responsibility. Like, let me give you an example. I'm someone who doesn't make much money in my life. Now, I could sit here and say, oh, it's because the world got me down. This happened, that happened, this happened. But the truth is, it's my fault. Because I spent most of my college years partying. I didn't apply myself as much as I could. Now I'm trying to get my life on track now. But I'm the person who's responsible. I'm responsible because I chose a major in college that I'm not using with my job right now. I'm responsible for my student debt. Not you. You shouldn't have to pay my student debt loans. Me. I'm responsible. One of the things I learned from my family is you see this a lot in football. Like if you have a good quarterback, they'll say this about a good quarterback. When life goes good for you, you should be humble and remember that there's a network of people around you, family and friends, that have helped you get where you are. And when life goes bad for you, always blame yourself. Even if there's some outside forces, all we could do, life's going to throw us curveballs. We do what we can to affect change ourselves. That's personal responsibility. Not popular in today's world. But that's what the Founding Fathers had in mind. They wanted a small, limited government. They wanted federalism, the idea that instead of having a massive federal government, you had state governments. In fact, your local government should be the one that has the most influence on your life. Then followed by the state government, and lastly, the federal government. Now it's the exact opposite. The federal government's massive. So, thanks, Not 8-Bit. Yeah, I will be running for Congress in 2022, I believe, unless something changes. And real quick on that, not to change the subject, but just real quick on my run for Congress. Understand, I'm not running for Congress because I'm like, oh, I would like that job. I'm running for Congress because I'm not happy with my current representative or with the people that are currently representing us. My current representative happens to be a Republican. By the way, he seems like a very nice guy. He's been nice when I've talked to him, but my big issue, the biggest issue that's occurring in our country right now is the coup against the president. It's the fact that we have a deep state intel agencies that are kingmakers and decide who's allowed to be president, who could they stop if they don't like. It doesn't matter what your issue is. Is it climate change? Is it Second Amendment rights? Is it free speech rights? Is it healthcare? Is it fighting the opioid crisis? Is it the economy? Whatever, left or right, it doesn't matter what your issue is. If there are unelected intel officials and other deep state operatives that are controlling who's allowed to be president, that are having investigations to stymie their administration, then no issue matters but that. Because your issue will only be dealt with if the FBI likes it, or if the CIA likes it, or if the people that are controlling the show like it. You against foreign regime change wars? Too bad, the intel agencies aren't, so they're going to keep happening. You against bailing out bankers that gamble your money And when they win, they capitalize all the wins. But when they lose, they socialize the losses and you have to bail them out. Doesn't matter because the deep state's for it. So I don't care if you're on the left or right. We should all come together to end this coup. Well, because this coup's happening, because this corruption's happening, that's the big issue that I want my representative dealing with. What has my representative done? Not much. Not much at all. Should be on television every day. It's a war, information war. So many people don't know the insane corruption that's going on behind the scenes. You need to be using every platform possible as a representative to be reaching out to the average person so they understand this corruption, and then we could do something about it. So, anyways, the reason I bring that up is I will not run in 2022 if someone better does, or if the person that's currently there decides to start doing the right thing. But so I'm not running because I want the job. I'm running because I feel the current representative isn't doing a good job against this coup. Original 13, clearly elections are being rigged. It could be through vote tampering. It could be through, trying to get rid of voter ID so that illegals could vote and things like that. It could be through the Diebold voting machines. All sorts of things. So, the next thing I wanted to say, and I did allude to this last night on American Joe Show, but one of the things we see with these laws, anti-gun laws. Now listen, I know most of the people listening here probably understand the importance of the Second Amendment and understand why infringements on it are bad, right? I get that. But let's also reach out to an audience that maybe says, hey, I want some sort of common sense gun control, okay? And the reason is, it's not difficult to understand that you hear all of this frightening stuff about mass shootings and things like that, and all of us want that to end. Every single one of us. Unless you're some sort of psychopath, you want these mass shootings to end. Of course. You want all murders to end. That's where I'm at. So, okay. You think, okay, gun control will help. It won't. Gun control won't help. It'll lead to the tyranny like I've been talking about in the first section of this. But the second question is, will it even lower mass shootings? Will it lower the amount of violent gun crime? And no, is the answer. Historically, that's been shown. In fact, gun crime in this country has been consistently going down for years. As a whole in the country, it has. Despite the fact that the amount of guns in circulations are exponentially increasing. These laws that are being suggested in Virginia have nothing to do with preventing gun violence. Nothing. And I could prove it. They have everything to do with keeping guns out of the hands of lawful citizens. Now, if you watched the American Joe show last night, you saw me bring this up. So now, I apologize to all of you. I have to shrink my beautiful face for a moment. Whoop. There we go. Don't worry, I'm still here. All right. This is from the latest numbers I could find. This was published in September 5th, 2018. But I'm just going to read this to you. This is from the Government Accountability Office. We'll get to them later. They're the ones that said that Trump withholding aid was a crime to the Ukraine. But okay, it goes. Individuals who submit falsified information on a form needed to purchase a firearm, do not disclose felony convictions, for example, may be subject to investigation and prosecution. In fiscal 2017, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives referred 12,700 denied purchases to its field divisions for investigation. In other words, about 13,000 people that were like felons illegally tried to buy a gun. As of June 2018, that's just 1 year, that's 2017. As of June 2018, U.S. Attorney offices prosecuted 12 of those cases. That's from the actual Government Accountability Office. Now think about what this means. If you really were, let's say you're someone. We're talking about someone who wants to restrict firearm access, wants to restrict Second Amendment rights, but let's assume it's for a good intent. It's not because they hate guns or they hate flyover country. Let's assume it's actually for good intent for a moment, for the purposes of this argument, okay? And so you say, well, we need, it's a shame that we have to infringe on people's Second Amendment rights, but we need to do it to stop gun violence. If that was the case, you would do what's called a triage system. And for those of you that are involved in the medical field or the military, you understand what that means, which is you deal with things, the bigger emergencies first. You qualify how big of an emergency is this. It would be the same with laws. What type of people do we restrict from guns first? Okay, felons. Even Second Amendment advocates understand that most felons, though I do believe that there should be a redemption program that's depending on the type of felony that you commit, where you should be able to get your Second Amendment rights back. But understandably, you've committed gun violence in the past. You're some heinous felon. You committed violence in the past. You lose your right to have firearms. Okay. If you're that person that's like, we need to institute laws to restrict access to firearms, these are the group of people you would least want to have firearms. Those that are previously convicted of violent felonies. It's already illegal. No new laws needed. Yet only 12 of the 13,000 of them that tried to purchase guns illegally are prosecuted? That's a joke. Instead of the governor of Virginia, if he really cared about ending gun violence, he would be pushing to actually prosecute the already criminals who are trying to get access to firearms. But that's not what they're doing. In fact, if you look at people like Northam and people that come from his virtue signaling cultural Marxist, like left, progressive wing of the left wing, they're trying all they can to legitimize felons in the first place. Trying to reinstitute their right to vote. I used to joke when I was in debate in college all the time, you would have these radical activists that would make the argument to ban prisons. Now you see people like AOC, people like Ilhan Omar saying, prisons, we should try to do away with them. Maybe not fully, but they're getting to that. Thanks, Fluid. Patriot Speaker of Eloquence. That's the best name I've been called in a while. But yeah, so that's how you know that these people aren't acting in good faith. Now, had Northam came out and said, listen, it's a travesty that only 12 people in 2018 of the nearly 13,000 felons that tried to buy firearms were charged. We're going to make sure that number is close to 100%. Then, if there's still gun violence, maybe we'll go further. Now, I'd still disagree with him going further, but at least then I could say, okay, it's a disagreement. I think it's a tragic disagreement because he doesn't understand the tyranny that will result from taking away our Second Amendment rights. But at least I could think he's operating in good faith. But that's not what's happening. And that's none of these gun control advocates. None of them do you ever hear yelling about these numbers. And it's not just this year. Was it just that was an anomaly? Of course not. And so now we get to one of my favorite segments on the show. It's Rob's Time Capsule, where we go back in time to something I wrote. Could be months ago, could be years ago. And we see how it applies to the news of today. This one might be the furthest I've gone back, so let me set it up. Before the halcyon days of Trump winning the election, let's go all the way back to January 8, 2016. Way back then, if you could remember. I had more hair at the time. Wasn't quite as handsome, though, I would say. Obama did a town hall on guns. For those of you who don't know, this website's above top secret. It's like a conspiracy theory blog, but it's more politics now, if I had to say. I am Grambler. Bill Hicks was my avatar in here. Back when I was anonymous and didn't use my real name. So Obama does this town hall on guns, and I watched it, and I wrote up a thing on it. So I'm going to skip the good, but just so you know, I did say there was some good things. Like, for example, I said, regardless of my opinions on Obama, I commend him for putting himself out there in this type of format. To go in front of a bunch of people on live TV and discuss something, that's commendable. You see this more in, like, the UK, where they have, like, question time. I love question time. I love it. So I wish there was more of this where just supposedly average people, though I question whether CNN had legitimately just average people in there. But let's get to what was bad about this, okay? So I'm not going to put the actual video of the town hall, but just take my word for it. Let me put the link to my, forget it. Anyways, the bad. Let's start with it. Number one, I write. Remember, this is January 2016. Obama does a town hall on guns because there was a shooting. I forget which one it was. And so guns are an emergency. We need to have a speech. Number one, there seems to be 3 areas of concern that Obama was bringing up that prompted his executive action. These were mass shootings, other gun violence, particularly in the inner city, and suicide and gun safety. Let's start with the mass shootings. Obama had no good response to the fact that his actions would not have stopped one of the recent events. His response was just, we have to do something. This is nonsense for 2 reasons. And by the way, what does Obama's town hall have to do? Because that type of mentality that you see Obama saying that I'm criticizing in this town hall is exactly what Northam's doing, is exactly what the left continues to do. So that's why it's important. And let's not kid ourselves, Obama's still probably the figurehead of the Democratic Party, at least the most popular person in it, to the Democrats. So here's why it's nonsense. First, just taking an action that's ineffective because it makes us feel good stymies real action that could be effective. We could be looking at psychotropic drugs and changing them to stop these shootings, or changing how we fight terrorism, or even training people for defense in these situations. There could be many other solutions, but as long as we were just doing feel-good, ineffective plans, none of the solutions will actually be accomplished. The second reason is his policy is a bad idea that in addition to not solving any of the problems, there are many more problems it creates. The first is that it's a red herring and that it'll lead to more gun control measures that actually do nothing to stop these shootings and affect our Second Amendment rights. Good job, Rob, 2016, right? Already yelling about the Second Amendment. It also sets even more of a precedent for expanded executive power. I know that executive actions have existed and been used before this, but not in this high profile of an area. This applies to Northam as well, like Northam's declaration, there was a threat, therefore you can't open carry here. That's a statewide executive action. The governor is the executive of the state. Even if you're for increased gun control, mark my words, you will rue the day when someone you disagree with becomes president and starts using executive authority to do what they want. The same with governor. Number 2, on suicides. It was mentioned that 2/3 of all gun deaths in the U.S. every year is from suicide, and Obama says we need to fix that. There is no evidence that these people are killing themselves with illegal guns. How will background checks or whatever or red flag laws stop this? The implied answer is there should be less guns or less people with guns. Instead of taking away the implement of suicide, shouldn't we be addressing the reason people want to kill themselves? Obama correctly asserts that white people kill themselves the most, but incorrectly alludes to the fact that young people are at more risk. In fact, according to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, the elderly are by far the most likely to commit suicide, and teens are among the lowest risk. In fact, one of the things that American Joe brought up to me last night, which I hadn't thought of, was about how these red flag laws will be used to target veterans. Veterans are also one of the groups with the highest suicide rates. And so oftentimes we see, remember, during Obama, they were releasing stuff that said, here's what you have to look for domestic terrorism. What were some of the things they talked about? Veterans, people that talk about the Second Amendment, people that talk about government tyranny. So even back then, they were starting to cast shade on veterans. All of our politicians do a good job of speaking lip service to veterans when the cameras are on. But actions are more important than words. And we see that these actions, like this law, the red flag laws, because the reason, for those of you who don't know, a lot of these red flag laws would say, if you've needed psychiatric help, you shouldn't get access to firearms. Well, a lot of our soldiers we put in terrible situations and they come back with PTSD. These are people that understand the Second Amendment and the need for it better than almost anyone. And so it would directly target them. And as American Joe said, and he would know more about this as a veteran, the end effect of this will be people, particularly veterans, being less likely to seek psychiatric help because they're afraid it will lead to them losing their Second Amendment rights. That means that the amount of suicides will go up. And remember, that's 2/3 of all gun deaths, suicides. It's a serious problem. We should be looking at suicides and how we could prevent them. But blaming the tool, the implement, isn't going to be the answer. And oftentimes, even if it's with good intentions, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Which, by the way, I don't think Northam and the Democrats of Virginia have good intentions on this. But even if they did, it will lead to more suicides. I continue. Let's make sure, check the chat real quick. This Rob guy, he writes pretty eloquently, doesn't he? Man. Okay. I continue. Perhaps we should figure out why these people are killing themselves and fix that problem instead of grandstanding about guns. My guess is a lot of these deaths are for financial reasons. We should stop focusing on the decimation of the middle class to help prevent these suicides. Also, substance abuse. That all stems from financial. Then there's a lot of PTSD and things like that. We should be focusing on that. And don't forget, a lot of these gun violence have to do, what do they call them, SSRDs? A lot of these mass shooters you see are prescribed these psychotropic medication. We should be doing more to determine the effects it has on people. Number 3, why Obama's answers were bad. On inner city and other gun violence, Obama says his actions will help because people are buying vans of guns at gun shows and then selling them to kids in the inner city. After the town hall, I watched the CNN coverage, and at one point, a person against Obama's measures asked a prosecutor for these measures if in all of her years as a prosecutor, she has ever heard of even one case of this happening. She says no. Now understand, this is a CNN panelist who's like, yay, Obama did a good job. They're like, it happens to be a prosecutor. You ever heard of this one time? No. I challenge anyone to find me a case where this has ever happened. But this is the big thing that you hear from the left all the, oh, these gun show loopholes. It's not, we can't blame the inner city. Don't blame inner city Baltimore. Don't blame inner city Detroit. See, all these gangsters are leaving and going to gun shows and then buying guns at gun shows. That's a joke. That's not happening. I continue. I actually have no problem with making people that are unofficial dealers that make a living selling guns repeatedly register as someone who sells guns. The question is, how many guns do you have to sell in order to be defined as a dealer? Obama's answer to that question was that they will look at it on a case-by-case basis. That is incredibly scary. This to me says that anyone selling even one gun can be under the microscope. And if his appointees deem that acceptable, then you will be left alone. This is not how laws are meant to be applied. People are already freaked out by Obama and his administration's apparent selective application and enforcement of laws such as the IRS or immigration. So this serves to freak people out even more. You can't just say, and that's the problem with the red flag laws in general. Well, it'll be applied in a case-by-case basis. So what? We're now enforcing laws based on a popularity contest? Your Bill of Rights protections are only valid so long as the right people like you? It's ridiculous. This is not how laws are meant to be applied. Next, Obama shrugs off questions about why we don't just enforce the laws that are already on the books. This is what I was talking about with the GAO statistics. So you can see, even back in 2016, I was on about this. He says that the same people that say that we should enforce the laws that are already on the books are the ones in Congress that won't fund law enforcement. That's a cop-out and garbage. At this point, when this town hall happened, Obama just got his omnibus bill passed, basically his budget bill. And he got everything that he wanted in that bill. He could have asked for more funding for the ATF. He could have asked for more funding for law enforcement, but he didn't. In fact, much of the rhetoric from Obama has been anti-law enforcement. Isn't it interesting how the left selectively applies this stuff? So on one hand, they'll bash, oh, all the police are racist, oh, they're terrible, they're horrible, blah, 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 blah. But on the other hand, when you're like, look, why did we only prosecute 12 out of 13,000 people that tried to illegally purchase guns? They say, oh, that's because you don't like law enforcement and won't enforce them enough, or won't pay for them to enforce enough. That's ridiculous. Absolutely absurd. What is the ATF doing more important than keeping guns out of the hands of criminals? Changing the smoking laws to 21? Banning vaping? Many people problems, myself included, with Obama's actions that it targets law-abiding people, but does nothing to the people that are actually doing the killing. Why not harsher penalties for people caught with illegal firearms? In fact, convictions for illegal guns has decreased steadily under Obama. Despite the fact that guns are being bought at a record pace across the U.S., gun crimes and all violent crimes are significantly declining, which Obama and all the Democrats admit. Only in select inner city areas like Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore would be one, and other gun crimes actually up. This suggests to me the problem isn't guns, but something else. To me, it seems it's not politically convenient for Obama to deal with inner city gang violence and other issues, so it's much easier to throw out the red herring of guns. And it has the added benefit of disarming us so that the middle class can be wiped out and they can usher in their socialist, globalist utopia. Number 5. This is the biggest point I've not seen addressed anywhere. Obama makes fun of conspiracy theorists who think that he's coming to take their guns. He says this is just a small, reasonable action he's taking and nothing more. This is the reason that I wanted to bring this up today, because this is exactly how I feel with what's going on in Virginia. So, and I just want to apologize for those of you that are new. I do try to follow the chat, but when I'm reading something like this, I have a tough time doing it. So when I'm done with this, I promise to come back to the chat. And if you have any questions or comments, I'll try to get to them. But this section that I wrote, again, this is January 8, 2016. See if this sounds familiar, right? Now, I want you to see how Obama responds and what I'm writing about it. It's the exact same type of things with Northam. What they say is one thing, but they belie their intentions when you get to ask them questions. They leave little snippets out that you could be like, I see what you're saying between the lines. So let's focus on this part that I wrote. It's the biggest point I've not seen addressed. He makes fun of conspiracy theories. He says this is just a small, reasonable action, just like Virginia. That's what Northam are saying. However, he and they, but he cannot contain himself throughout the whole town hall meeting of suggesting that he wants to go further. A woman who was raped asked him why he would make it harder for her to get a gun to protect herself. He responds, his executive action would not make it more difficult for her. Now, he could have left it there and just said, oh, no, you're misunderstanding what I'm trying to do. And then you would have said, okay, we agree or we disagree, but fair enough, that's what he said. But instead, he goes on. He says, he starts on about actually her having a gun makes it more likely she would have been hurt or killed. The implication here is what? You shouldn't have had a gun. Do you see how he knows what he has to say politically. Remember, this is I talk about this often. We know that there's kind of a battle going on inside the Democratic Party. You have sort of the Pelosi, the establishment, Hillary Clinton type Democrats. They're all about corporate money and all that stuff. And then you have the AOCs. We'll leave Bernie and the socialist faction out of it for now. Now, Pelosi and AOC are at each other all the time. Ask yourself this. Do you really think that the radical policies the AOC is issuing, do you really think Pelosi has a problem with them? I don't. I think Pelosi's a more shrewd political actor. She understands that you can't implement the insane stuff that AOC wants to overnight. You have to gradually implement it because the voters aren't going to accept things such as you shouldn't be allowed to eat meat. You shouldn't be allowed to own a car. We should get rid of home ownership. We should get rid of fossil fuels in 10 years. We should give felons all these rights. We should try to disband prisons and things like that. The average voters are like, what? Or how about this one? We'll give you guaranteed government money, even if you don't feel like working. Remember that was originally in the Green New Deal until there was mass outrage and they were like, oh, no, we'll pull that out. See, Pelosi's really saying to AOC, yes, of course this is our plan. But you can't tell people that. You have to lie to them. You have to do it incrementally. Obama knew that as well. Obama's not going to come out and say, yeah, we're going to take your guns. He's going to say, no, it's a reasonable action. It's just a small thing. But then once you start talking to him and you get him off the talking points, all of a sudden he lets slip, just like all these Democrats. Oh, no, ma'am. My policies wouldn't make it more difficult for you to get a gun. Also, you shouldn't have a gun because it makes it more likely you'll be harmed. Do you see what he's doing there? That's exactly what's going on in Virginia. This is why you can't give an inch to the gun control people. They will never be satisfied. Okay, let's get rid of bump stocks. The problem with bump stocks is you could make one. It would be incredibly easy. If you know what a bump stock is, it would be easy to make one yourself with just household. Now, I have plenty of people that are like, yeah, okay, maybe get rid of bump stocks. It sounds reasonable. But the problem is, once you start down that road, they'll say the next thing. I've asked gun control people over and over. We just want to get rid of assault weapons. We'll define assault weapon. Well, one shot, one pull. Okay, that's every handgun. Do you want to get rid of handguns? No. Well, what is it about the assault weapons? Well, they have a big clip. Okay, well, that's handguns. Do you want to get rid of them? Oh, no. Okay, then what else is it about assault weapons? Oh, well, it's that they're responsible for so many of these deaths. Actually, far and away, handguns are responsible for the most gun crime. You want to get rid of handguns? Oh, no. But every argument they're making is an argument to get rid of handguns. And then we see the bill that actually, the assault weapon bill that got pulled from Virginia, if you read it carefully, it talked about outlawing the sale, transfer, possession of guns with clips of over 10 shots. That's most handguns. Or at least a lot of them. And the other thing that was shady about that was it said that if it could hold that many. So that would mean even if you had a clip of 7, if your gun could hold a clip of 10, then the gun itself would still fall under those restrictions. And as we know, there are modifications for almost every gun where you can increase clip size. By the way, I say this knowing this is not my area of expertise. I know many of you in the chat probably know more about guns than me. Let's go on with what Obama was saying, though, real quick, finish this up. A preacher suggests every gun should be registered like our cars. Obama says it would be difficult to do, but he agrees. And he goes off on how when we can do that, we can make all other products safe, so why not guns? Of course, he ignores that a sheriff just gets up and says, yes, well, other products aren't specifically mentioned in the Bill of Rights. That's an argument that you hear with, remember in Virginia, for those of you who don't know, a bunch of sheriffs are coming out saying, we will not enforce these unconstitutional laws that Northam's suggesting. And so they'll basically be sanctuary cities for gun rights. No, I thought the left was all about sanctuary cities. But they say, oh no, there's no comparison between sanctuary cities for guns and sanctuary cities for illegals. You're right, there is no comparison. Your right to bear arms is outlined specifically in the Constitution. There is no right to be an illegal immigrant. So if anything, there's more of a right to have sanctuary cities for gun laws. Obama again, he never responds to Anderson Cooper mentioning to him that people are afraid he will come for guns because he's routinely praised Australians' gun confiscation laws. When you take this in conjunction with Obama and his administration actions on healthcare, where Obama said he semantically meant something different when he said, if you like your plan, you could keep it, and where one of the writers of the bill said they had to lie to the American people because they know it's what's best for them. And it seems like to many gun supporters, this is just the first step to more gun control laws, which it absolutely is. It's the exact same in Virginia today. Considering Obama's rhetoric in this debate and his past justifications for, to put it politely, stretching the truth, I too am worried this is just the first step in a greater plan. Obama says he will be gone in a year, but that doesn't mean this couldn't be part of his party agenda. Nailing it. Rob nailed it in 2016. So yeah, I'll come back to the chat now. But now, do you see how this has been in the works? This type of stuff's been in the works. I was writing about it in 2016. There were people writing about it way before me. But if you listen to these people, they belie their true intents. They're not telling you the truth. They will not be satisfied with just the measures that they're putting on the bill now. They want total disarmament. That's what they want. They want us to be like Australia. They want us to be like the UK. We are not Australia or the UK. We're the United States of America. The Second Amendment was number 2 for a reason. The only one valued higher than it was your right to speak. But immediately following that was your right to defend yourself from a tyrannical government, to ensure that you have the right to speak. If we give that up, it'll be the end. It'll be worse than we already have of the tyranny that we face. And the last thing I'll say about, let me make sure it's the last thing I'll say. I already talked about the FBI corruption, right? Look what the FBI did to the President of the United States. If the highest law enforcement agency could do that to a president 17 times, over and over again, look at all the heads of the intel agencies, how they're out to get Trump. You don't think they would do that to you? Let me just check the chat real quick. Google Title 18 USC Section 242. Why aren't Virginians falling under this? I'll have to check that out. Thanks to 2Q for being here. Yes, Dale, absolutely. We need to stand up for the Constitution. Right, Line, and you're exactly right. Disarming Americans will be much more difficult than those other countries. Look, I can't stress enough. One of the things that you see from the establishment, and they use this, particularly you see this on the left, is sort of these utopian principles. Let me tell you some harsh realities. There will always be gun violence. There will always be violence. There will be another mass shooting. It's terrible. I hate that. I wish we didn't live in a world like that. I wish we didn't live in a world where rapes and murders and mass shootings and racial hatred and all this other crap happens. But it does. And no law we ever institute will change that. It will always happen. There are pros and cons to everything. Anytime you restrict your personal freedom or liberty and rights for safety, you should question that. Now, yes, I don't want to live in a total anarchist world with no laws. Of course, that's not what I want. So there's a trade-off. We trade off some liberty for safety. But how much? These people that just say, there will be violence, therefore, we need to trade in our liberty. Wasn't it Ben Franklin that said those willing to trade liberty for safety deserve neither? We have to, again, I bring up collegiate debate. You have to look at things, you see this happen in the left all the time, where they'll look at something, say income inequality. Look, there's a lot of problems that I complain about the government, both parties, a lot, if you watch my channel. I really do. But I'm not naive. I understand things could be a lot worse. I could live in Iran. I could live in many other places where things are worse. I could live, I'm basically one of the luckiest people that have ever existed in the history of humanity. Why? Because I was born in the United States of America and because I was born in this time. I'm considered probably borderline poor, like, maybe lower middle class or upper lower class. Any other time in history, like go back 100 years, I would be considered extremely wealthy. The poor in our country now have access to things that most of human history could only have dreamed of. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't strive to help the poor. We shouldn't try to make things better. Of course that's the case. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because we have to look at things in context. So when you see a mass shooting, it's easy to have an emotional reaction and say, we need to do something about that. But one of the things we need to do, and I always suggest this when these type of things happen, where does this stand? What does the trend look like over a larger period of time? And the truth is, the numbers all show that gun violence is down. Now, they'll fudge with the numbers just like the government always does, just like the deep state always does. And so they'll define a mass shooting in a certain way. And they'll say this group, the right's responsible for more domestic terrorism because they define domestic terrorism in a certain way. Oh, the mass shootings are increasing because they decide to define mass shootings in a certain way. But at the end of the day, you just look at the numbers. Deaths from gun violence, they've gone down. They might go up year to year a little, but the overall trend is going down. That's despite the amount of guns going up. So why would we want a radical change? Take away the idea of it being your right? And fighting against government tyranny. Just the idea of solving gun violence. If things are gradually getting better, why would we want some sort of radical change? I had this argument in debate all the time. One year, the topic all year was overruling one of 5 court decisions. One of them was, Supreme Court decision was Morrison. And, oh my God, this is forever ago. But the Morrison decision was something like this. A woman was tragically raped. I believe she was a professor, and she was raped at this university. And of course, I think the person who raped her was criminally convicted. And then she also civilly sued. But she civilly sued the state as well. And the ground she sued the state was under the Interstate Commerce Clause. Because she said because there were out-of-state tuition being paid at her university, her rape affected commerce. And therefore, she was entitled to money from the state. And she lost, and the court said no. Now, look, she was a victim, and that's tragic. But they said no, this has nothing to do with interstate commerce. So the people that would want to overturn that case in debate, they would say it was all about women's rights and the Violence Against Women Act, VAWA, and we need to protect women's rights. And so when you looked at the statistics, it's like domestic violence, sexual violence, sexual assaults, all of these crimes against women, they still occur, but it's been getting better and better and better. Now, one rape's too many. I get that. But we're doing well. We're on a trend going in the right direction. And when you said that, these people would snap. How dare you? You're okay for rape of women? No, that's not what I said. I just said when we're looking at the problem, we have to look at it in context. Yes, we should still strive to make things better, but we don't want to make some sort of radical change that could reverse the progress that we're making. This is the problem that you see a lot of time on the left. And there's some people on the right that do it as well. But this is part and parcel to the Democratic Party. That is, they don't argue on facts, they argue on feelings. And so they'll just make you feel bad. Oh, there was a mass shooting? Well, then you're horrible. David Hogg will come out and say, you have blood on your hands if you don't want to disarm yourself and take away your Second Amendment rights. But those aren't rational arguments. Those aren't factual-based arguments. Those are just appeals to emotion. And it's childish. It's childish and it's hurt and it's dangerous. Because if you allow yourself to give up your right, it's the same with the Fourth Amendment. The Patriot Act. I say this all the time, right? Anytime you give the government the power to take away your rights, it's almost impossible to get those rights back. So, for example, take the Patriot Act. We had 9/11. So the government says we want to pass the Patriot Act. Now let's do a little Schrodinger's Patriot Act. Let's go back to the day the Patriot Act signed. Let's say from that point we go 10 years forward. And in that 10 years, hypothetically, there wasn't one terrorist attack. Do you think the government would say, oh, okay, well then we no longer need the Patriot Act because there wasn't any terror attacks? No, they would say, see, the Patriot Act worked. Violating your Fourth Amendment rights to privacy worked. There was no terrorism, therefore we're going to keep it going. Now, let's go back and look at it the opposite way. Let's say the Patriot Act's passed, but then there's all sorts of terrorist attacks. In fact, they increase. Do you think the government's going to say, oh, well, we passed the Patriot Act and terror attacks increased, therefore we'll get rid of it? No, they'll say, this is proof we need more government infringements of your rights. It's the same with these Second Amendment claims. They will never be happy. Every shooting will become evidence that they need to take more of your rights. Any lack of shooting will be evidence that their taking away of your rights was successful. Yeah, gun playing around. Absolutely. Guns are used in a defensive manner all the time. And look, never forget, the groups that the left claims to be for, right? Because they want to break us all into groups based on our gender, our race, our ethnicity, our religion. You know, that's what they want to do. That's what cultural Marxism is about. So they claim all these groups are oppressed, women or minorities or, etc., poor people. Those are the people that actually benefit by owning guns the most. Never forget, the first attempt at infringing on the Second Amendment in this country was done by the Democratic Party, or what would become the Democratic Party, arguing that the recently freed slaves were not entitled to the Second Amendment. So for my black friends out there, the first example of gun control, of taking away the Second Amendment, was directed at your ancestors. Women that are victims of sexual assaults. I remember watching a Penn and Teller. They used to have this show called Bullshit. I remember watching their one on guns. Their plan was, you should give every woman in the United States a handgun. The government should give every woman a handgun. And they were like, make it pink. That way some macho tough guy won't try to steal it. How do you think? Now, if a woman, you could choose not to accept that gun if you want. You could say, no, I don't want it. But if you're a sexual predator, how willing are you to take that chance that the woman you're about to assault is one of the ones who didn't accept the gun? I know the left wants to argue that there's no difference between men and women, but that's garbage. In general, I'm not saying there aren't any women that could beat me up. My wife's probably one of them. But in general, men are physically stronger than women. Having a firearm for self-defense for a woman is an equalizer. But they don't look at it that way. Yeah, Crow, you're absolutely right. The saying is, you could vote your way into socialism, but you have to shoot your way out of it. In other words, you could vote your way into giving the government more power, but it's near impossible to vote your way out of it. Let's see. All right, my buddy Tom's in here. For those of you who don't know, I hope Tom doesn't mind me saying this. When I ran for Congress in the special election in 2019, District 12, Tom was my campaign manager. And Tom's a Democrat. But Tom and me both understand that your party affiliation doesn't matter. Whether or not you're going to work for the interest of actual people is what matters. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was real quick on the Virginia situation, which I've gone on for an hour about. It was longer than I planned, but that's all right. It's a very important topic. The last thing was this idea of this threat that we hear, that there's some sort of threat there. This is something that's been conditioned on us. If you're going to Virginia, be careful, and use Charlottesville as an example. Now look, I can't stress enough, over and over and over again, I hate identity politics. One of the least interesting things about me or about any one of you is what your skin color is. I don't care at all. I find anyone who primarily identifies themselves based on their skin color is disinteresting, and oftentimes it leads to bigotry and other things. That's not to say you can't have pride in your heritage. I get that, but for me, it's just like, whatever. So I have no love for the racists that were at Charlottesville. None. Now, Trump did condemn the racist, and there were people that weren't racist there, despite the media saying otherwise. I did a whole video on it. That, for example, there were groups there, First Amendment groups that were protecting the rights to speech that were on the side of the Charlottesville protesters. There were clergy people that were there trying to keep the peace that were defending the protesters at Charlottesville. There were all sorts of groups, militia-type groups that showed up that were protecting them. And I had articles showing that. So when Trump said there were good people on both sides, I think Trump was kind of a moron and didn't look into it. He just thought, hypothetically, yes, there are good people that are against the statues being taken down, and there are good people that want them taken down, and there are bad people on both sides. Don't get me wrong, the racists were terrible. So I just want to make that clear. But the reason I bring up Charlottesville is this. Even the ACLU, which obviously has no love for Trump, admitted that the police intentionally had the two sides run into each other to cause a conflict. That's what the police did. Why did they do that? Because they didn't want the Charlottesville protesters there. So they said, you know what? We'll cause a scene. We'll force violence to occur. That way next time we could be like, remember Charlottesville? Yeah, this ain't going to happen again. That's what went on. And I don't think it was Joe Schmo police officer that made that decision. That was someone higher up. But clearly, even the ACLU says it was incredibly strange that the police that you would think would get in between the two violent sides instead funneled the protesters into the counter-protesters that ensured violence. What's up, Escape with Jay? Right, that's absolutely right, Crocker. It was called Unite the Right. People were like, yeah, I'm against these statues taken down. You could have went there and been like, whoa, I ain't down with all this Nazi crap, you know? So be careful if you're in Virginia for things like that occurring. The last thing I'll say is this, that the normalization of Antifa, this is why Antifa is more dangerous than you always hear about violent right-wing groups. Look, again, screw the Nazis, screw the KKK. I have no love for them. They're allowed to exist, but if they advocate violence or if they're up to no good, I go at them with the full extent of the law. You have my total support. Absolutely. But you always hear them cite these statistics. Oh, the right-wing violence is worse. Right-wing violence is worse. I'm not even going to get into how do you define left-wing versus right-wing when you're talking about those things. But here's why what Antifa is doing to her. It's not that they're worse because they've actually killed more people or they've committed more violence. The reason they are worse is because their violence has been normalized. It's been celebrated by people in power. Show me one person in the media, show me one person in our government on the right that praised the Charlottesville, the guy that killed Heather Heyer. Show me one person that praised the KKK or neo-Nazis. There aren't any. In fact, when Steve King, the moron, came out and said, well, I don't see what the problem with white nationalism is. It's like, dude, no. What happened, though? The Republicans all condemned him, even though he was a member of their party. But in the left, you have Don Lemon saying, oh, Antifa, it's anti-fascist, it's in the name. You have Chris Cuomo saying they're not that bad. You had politicians saying, well, they were there fighting bad things. In Charlottesville, that was the importance of what Trump was saying. The importance wasn't the good people on both sides. The important thing he said was there were bad people on both sides. Because for those of us that remembered the Berkeley riots and Antifa, we knew who these thugs were. And so when the media and politicians are saying these were heroes that were fighting racism, no, they're not. They're violent thugs that want to silence anyone they disagree with and they showed up there spoiling for a fight. That's not to say that the violent thugs that were the neo-Nazis or the Klan people also weren't heinous and were spoiling for a fight. They both suck. Don't get me wrong. But everyone was condemning the one side, and then all of these people on the left were celebrating kind of what Antifa was doing. That's what makes them dangerous. Now ask yourself this. Someone give me an example of a left-wing rally or a left-wing protest or a left-wing anything where you had violent masked right-wingers show up and start beating people. Can anyone give me an example? Since Trump's been elected? I can't think of one out of hand. All of these clashes you see between like the Proud Boys and Antifa, almost exclusively, or Patriot Prayer, it's Antifa shows up to their rallies, not the other way around. Not Proud Boys showed up to protest Hillary Clinton and Antifa defended Hillary Clinton supporters. It's always the other way around. Now, as a result of the media and all that normalization, instead of Antifa and the people that show up seeking to cause violence to rallies and stuff, instead of them being dealt with properly by law enforcement, it's been allowed to go on so long that now we could say, Governor Northam could say, oh, we had a threat that there would be violence here, so we have to take away people's Second Amendment rights. The reason that most people could be like, yeah, I guess there could have been violence, is because the left has been violent for so long, these Antifa people, that yeah, it is expected. They probably will show up and start crap. So now the lawful people that are lawfully assembling have to have their rights stripped because of unlawful outsiders coming in and the fact that no one in a position of authority will do anything to stop them. There was a rabbi that I saw quoted the other day. After the shooting, the black Hebrew Israelite, you know, the same one that the New York Times wrote a puff piece about going after the Covington kids. After they shot up, what was it, a kosher deli? I saw a rabbi come out and say, what are we supposed to do? The police won't defend us. The mayor won't defend us. And we saw with the Proud Boy trial, if you try to defend yourself, you'll be demonized. That's exactly what the left and the establishment wants in Virginia. They want someone who's pro-Second Amendment to fly off the handle and commit some sort of violence so they could say, see, this is what a danger the people that talk about the Second Amendment are. Don't give in to that. Political violence is not the answer. We are winning here. Even people on this isn't a left-right issue. This is an establishment versus people against the establishment issue. We're winning the information war. The more desperate they get, the more they try to censor people, the more they shadow ban people, the more they say, oh, we need to get rid of independent content creators, the more they tell you you have to go to them for news, is more evidence that we are going to win the information war. So don't give in to them and resort to violence. So that's all I have on Virginia. I hope you guys like that. Thank you to all the people that are here from American Joe. So I'm going to, if you all don't mind, it'll be 20 seconds. Let me run out and grab some more water. I run my mouth too much, so I'm getting dry mouth. Hey, my buddy Drone Tech's in here. Check out Drone Tech's channel. It's fantastic. Okay, I'm back. So, yeah, just real quick while we're switching to the next category, which is going to be impeachment. Hopefully that's something that interests you all as well. Just a couple things. Remember, check out my description. I really would appreciate if people could support me on Patreon or on PayPal. I try to be really open about where I'm spending the money, so I'm trying to get some editing software. I talked to American Joe last night. He's given me all sorts of good suggestions. My buddy Drone Tech and SJG have given me great suggestions on things like just like I need lighting solutions, maybe a green screen or some sort of background. I'm trying to get a new desktop computer that could run programs and things like that better, and just some more mobile cameras, microphones, and things like that from when I'm doing things on the road. So if you have money to spare, please support me. If you want to support someone and you don't have money to support multiple people and you like some other independent content creator like Drone Tech, American Drone, please support them then. As a community, we all need to grow, and that'd be really helpful. If you don't have money to give, don't worry. I'm still going to be putting out material. There's also links in the description to follow me on Twitter and BitChute. And please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, got that out of the way. Let's go with impeachment. Yay. Oh, the last thing I want to say, let me give a shout out to I have 2 patrons right now, so let me give a shout out to Dib, who is in here, and a shout out to Milo, who I haven't seen in a while, but is also a patron of mine. I want to give a shout out to Drone Tech for helping me with a lot of technical issues to get me started, and a friend of mine, Chirby, who set me up with a bunch of sound equipment, in addition to a friend of mine, Logan, that helped me with that. And finally, my friend Bob, who drew the fun little picture of me, you see. So, thank you. Impeachment. So the first thing I want to go over, I have a lot of new people watching today, so I think it's important to go back over this. Let's talk about what the impeachment is actually about. Impeachment, and I did a video on this from my car the other day, you can check out. Impeachment is about criminalizing, investigating the crimes of the establishment and the deep state, particularly the Democratic Party. So what does that mean? It sounds fancy, but they spent 3 years, over 3 years now, investigating everyone and everything connected to Donald Trump. They said we had to leave no stone unturned. They raided his lawyer's office in the middle of the night. They tipped CNN off to be sitting there when the FBI raided his associates. They said we had to look at crimes he committed from, possible crimes Trump committed from decades past, etc. On and on and on. They contacted foreign governments. We had 3 senators write a letter, for example, to the government of Ukraine, the very thing they accused Trump of, asking for evidence about crimes Trump possibly committed. Obama's administration, particularly his FBI, was working with the governments of Australia, with the UK, with Italy, and other countries in trying to find out if anyone connected to Trump committed crimes. The media, academia, Silicon Valley, the entertainment industry. I talk about cultural institutions of power. Those are the 4 groups I'm talking about primarily. Let me say them again. The media, academia, the entertainment industry, and Silicon Valley. What do I mean by cultural institutions of power? These are the institutions that shape our public narrative. So all the things that we're discussing, why are we talking about impeachment? Because these groups said we're going to be talking about impeachment. Because they're all just propagandists and mouthpieces for the establishment, particularly the Democratic Party. But make no mistake about it, when I say the establishment, it's not just the Democratic Party. They are the face of it. They are the predominant people, the push forward of it. But you have your Jeff Flakes, you have your John McCains, you have your Mitt Romneys. So it's not just one-sided, even though it's predominantly. Those groups all said, did any of them have a problem with the investigation of Trump? No, they actively cheered it on, based on a lie, based on Russian-sourced lies, Russian propaganda. Remember, the Steele dossier that said that Trump and people connect to him were working to steal the election with Putin, that was sourced by Kremlin officials. That was Kremlin propaganda. That our FBI, our media, our academia, our Silicon Valley, that they all pushed, and they didn't have a problem with it. But the moment that Trump wants to start to investigate their corruption, or the corruption of the Obama administration, now that's impeachable. That's a crime. How dare he use his office for something like that? Let me see. David Fedor says, we could prosecute Northam criminally. Yeah, let me see if I can find what you were saying. Talks but don't. Yeah, I'm sorry, David. It's tough to when I get rolling. It's tough to read a lot of the comments. I do apologize. I don't doubt that Northam's exerting his executive authority. The problem is, how do we prosecute when we could see blatantly all of these crimes that are committed by executive agents all the time and no one's ever charged with a crime? So winning the information war is key to force the prosecutions, because the prosecutions won't happen unless there's the political will from the people on the street for them to occur. That's why it's important to win the information war. A lot of times I think people make the mistake of just saying, well, we'll take this to court. But the courts don't care. I mean, that's obvious. Look what Obama, how he flouted the law with his refusal to enforce immigration laws. What is the role of the president? He enforces the law, right? The legislative branch writes the law. The executive branch enforces the law. The judicial branch interprets the law. Obama refused to enforce the law. The judicial branch let it slide. So, but I do apologize if anyone's asking me stuff and I missed it. I try to look on it. But pressing on, yeah, going on with impeachment. So they're all for, as soon as Trump tries to investigate their crimes, they're all for, oh, well, now he needs to be impeached. It's a crime for him to try to investigate. They literally keep saying Trump's doing this to benefit himself politically. Is there any doubt that this impeachment's being done by Democrats to benefit themselves politically? Therefore, can we have an impeachment trial of all the Democrats? But wait, then that would benefit the Republicans. So we'd have to have an impeachment trial to go after the Republicans as a result of that. What a paradox, right? So I want to start at the beginning of impeachment, and this is something I've said often. I can't believe that I don't hear more people making this argument. In fact, I might be the only person I've heard make this as succinctly as I'm going to make it. The Republicans made a mistake in the House impeachment hearings. They spent all of their time focusing on the whistleblower, which is fine to focus on, don't get me wrong, and the fact that it wasn't a quid pro quo, which is also fine to focus on. Both of these are defensive arguments. Here's what I mean by defensive argument. If you win those arguments, but you lose other arguments, an average person who's just trying to be objective could still say, well, maybe there's a reason to impeach Trump. I am an average video game player. I don't play a lot anymore, but I used to, and I suck at them. But so let me get what I mean. I think there were 4 potential arguments to make here. They went with the weakest 2, the defensive positions, and this is a problem with the Republicans in general. They're always on the defense. They allow the Democrats to control the narrative, and it pushes them on the defense. So the first argument about the whistleblower. Okay, fair enough. Let's say the Republicans totally win that. Okay, the whistleblower was biased. Now, an objective person could come to the conclusion, okay, the whistleblower was biased, but, still, what Trump did was really bad, so even though the investigation started off with a biased dude, I think what Trump did was bad, so therefore, maybe still impeach Trump. That argument doesn't win if you win it alone. How about the second argument, that it wasn't a quid pro quo? Theoretically, you could still have people say, okay, it wasn't a quid pro quo, but I don't like the idea that Trump was trying to investigate Biden, so I think that could be a reason to remove him. What is the argument that the Republicans should have been making? You ready? This is going to blow your mind. It's real simple. The argument is this. Trump had every right and, in fact, every duty to investigate whether or not the previous administration used $1 billion taxpayer dollars to benefit themselves. That's it. Trump had every right and duty to investigate whether or not the Ukrainian government interfered in the 2016 election. That's it. Hey, Milo, thanks for being here, man. I'm glad you showed up. Milo's another one of my great patrons. Now, think if you win those arguments, but you lose the quid pro quo argument and you lose the whistleblower argument. Here's what an objective person could say. I don't know if the whistleblower was biased. I don't think the Republicans win that argument. And I think the Democrats are right. This was a quid pro quo. But the Republicans are right that I don't care that there was a quid pro quo because Trump was right to want those investigations. If you win, there was a reason to investigate Biden and Obama. If you win, there was a reason to investigate Ukrainian election interference. Then it doesn't matter if there's a quid pro quo. At all. And how do I know this? Joe Biden admitted that he and Obama used a quid pro quo. The media, Silicon Valley, the entertainment industry, academia, all of the Democrats, all the people in the State Department, all the people in the Intel departments, none of them, not one person, not even the Republicans, said that Obama should be impeached over that. Because they understand quid pro quos are used in foreign policy all the time. It's not a quid pro quo that's illegal. It is doing it for personal gain. So it's the intent of the quid pro quo that matters. So the Republicans are wasting their time just arguing, was this or was this not a quid pro quo? The entire impeachment hearing was just the Democrats calling witness after witness, trying to get us where we already are with Obama. That a quid pro quo was issued. That's it. Now, if they didn't have a problem with Obama's quid pro quo, why do they have a problem with Trump's? Well, it's because they assume, and make no mistake about it, just because Biden was the one who admitted to the quid pro quo, Obama was ultimately the person who decided, and he should be held accountable. There is no proof of the intent of Obama and Biden. I'll agree with that, because we haven't even had an investigation. But there's also... Don't wait your time. But there's also no proof of the intent of Donald Trump at all. In fact, there's only one person that testified that directly talked to Trump. That was Victor Sondland. He said Trump told him specifically, I don't want a quid pro quo. But even if Trump did want the quid pro quo, it is entirely feasible and fits in with Trump's character that, one, Trump's intent was he doesn't like giving out foreign aid, and that's why he was skeptical. We see that evidenced over and over again. That's one of the criticisms the Democrats make of him all the time. Second, that he wanted to ensure that there wasn't corruption in Burisma and there wasn't corruption with Ukrainian election interference. That's totally plausible and legitimate. So why do we assume it's just to benefit him? Now, the Democrats will make the argument, and I've heard this argument, yeah, but it would have benefited him. Okay, but that's irrelevant. The impeachment scandal theoretically benefits the Democrats, so does that mean we should impeach all of them because they're doing it just for personal gain? No, because they'd say, well, even if it does benefit them, there's potential corruption they're looking into. So why wouldn't that be true of Donald Trump? When Obama's administration was trouncing around the world trying to get information on crimes Trump and his people committed, that benefited the Democrats in the 2016 election. Did anybody say that they all needed to be removed from office for that? Does Schiff need to be impeached because he was trying to get evidence and nude photos of Trump's from what he thought were Russians? It only applies to Trump for some reason. The Republicans, yes, it's okay to say it wasn't a quid pro quo, but when you put all of your eggs in that basket, what did I say was going to happen? Go back and look at my videos. I said, this will allow the Democrats over and over again to say, oh, we found new evidence. Here's a new person that thinks it was a quid pro quo. And we already know firsthand knowledge isn't necessary for them to claim it's evidence. I overheard someone overhear someone that overheard someone that Trump said it was a quid pro quo. Okay, another trial, another witness, drag it on. All of that could have been stopped by saying, we don't think it was a quid pro quo. We think this whistleblower is corrupt. But the main argument is, yes, we should be investigating Biden's and Obama's quid pro quo. And yes, we should be investigating 2016 Ukrainian election interference. But they didn't do that. Over and over again, they let that opportunity slip. Some of them kind of made the argument, but no one made it significantly. Now let's start at the beginning. Why should there be an investigation into the Bidens and into Obama and Biden's quid pro quo? This is the part, I got a little sidetracked there. This is the part I haven't heard anyone say. Now this is going to sound wordy, so I'll break it down for you. But here we go. Anytime we have an executive branch official threaten to withhold congressional approved aid that is you and me's tax dollars to ensure that a prosecutor is fired who happens to be looking into a company that their family members a part of, there needs to be an investigation. Period. Every other piece of evidence that you could theoretically talk about is irrelevant. If I'm president and my brother Jojo here is on the board of directors of a company and they're working in China and we're going to give money to China, and as president I say, you know what, we're not going to send that money to China until the prosecutor looking into my brother's company's fired, you should investigate me. It doesn't matter if I say, but wait, a bunch of people in the EU said that guy should be fired. It doesn't matter if I say, wait, Rachel Maddow says that prosecutor should be fired. Don Lemon said that prosecutor should be fired. Anderson Cooper, the New York Times. Christine Lagarde at the International Monetary Fund. George Soros said that person should be fired. It doesn't matter. That's not how we do things in the United States. Oh, everyone said it was cool, so it's cool. No, that's me and your tax dollars, $1 billion. Now, every newspaper outlet retroactively said, yes, it had an appearance of a conflict of interest, that Joe Biden was the point man for ending corruption in the Ukraine. And one of the people they were going after that they thought was this big corrupt oligarch was this guy Zlochevsky. And he ran the company Burisma. And the argument was that Burisma, when it was an energy company, Zlochevsky, when he had connections to the former president, ensured that all sorts of government contracts went to him and this company, and then he pocketed a bunch of basically what would be the people of Ukraine's money. So Burisma, Zlochevsky was considered one of the most corrupt oligarchs that the Obama administration wanted dealt with, and Burisma was his big company. Hunter Biden's on the board of directors at the exact same time that Joe Biden's investigating, trying to out the corruption in this company. And then Joe Biden says, why won't the prosecutor looking into it be fired? And we're going to withhold tax aid until it happens. That warrants an investigation, period. I don't care that a bunch of people in the EU said that prosecutor should have been fired. I don't care. We the American people don't rely on the EU to determine where our tax dollars go. It's that simple. Now, here's the crazy part. There are people trying to disagree with this. Just put the shoe on the other foot test. Let's say that, we decide we're going to give aid to, just pick another country. We're going to give aid to India, right? Let's say hypothetically. And Don Jr. is on the board of directors in a company in India, and India's investigating that company. And so Trump says, hey, India, before we give you this aid, I want you to fire the prosecutor looking at Don Jr.'s company. If you don't think the media and the Democrats' head would explode, you're not living in reality. It's that simple. There's nothing more to be said about it. So that's how you know that it's a sham. It's all garbage. Here's what's insane, though. When you start to look at the more evidence, aside from and I'm telling you, I don't care what the rest of the evidence says. There's reason for an investigation. Does this mean that Biden's guilty or that Obama's guilty? No. Not on its own. It does not. And I have no love for Obama or Biden. But this on its own is not proof of their guilt. It's proof of the need for an investigation. And if there's a need for an investigation, and Trump was trying to get that investigation, then there's no case for impeachment. At all. And the Democrats will say, well, this is what they say. Just because maybe there should have been an investigation of Biden's doesn't mean that Trump should have withheld the aid. But that's not what you said about Obama's quid pro quo. You said as long as it was to investigate possible corruption, that the quid pro quo was okay. That's what you said. That's what the Democrats said. That's what the media said. So why wouldn't the same apply to Trump? It's not that simple. A catchphrase for me. That's funny. So when we start to look at more of the evidence, you could just see how corrupt this is. Now, the best person and what's the word I'm looking for? The best journalist we have going right now is John Solomon. Without a doubt. He's been on this story, and he was on the Russiagate hoax from the very beginning. John Solomon's name has been dragged through the mud by his media peers. They just say he's wrong, he's wrong, he's wrong. They never address what he's actually saying. They just say he's wrong. the media says this is all debunked conspiracy theory. Hunter and Joe Biden did nothing wrong. Nothing. Hunter Biden, who had no expertise whatsoever, whether in the oil field or in Ukraine, gets paid what ends up being, what was it? What's the number up to now? Like $75,000 a month or something? I forget the exact number. Millions of dollars, though. In total, I believe. Despite having no expertise, that's to be on the board of directors for this company. Everybody admits. Even I did a video a while back. Time magazine talked to Ukrainians now who admitted that are in Zelensky's government that admitted, yeah, the fact that Hunter Biden was on the board of directors made it very difficult to investigate Burisma, which, by the way, is one of the campaign promises that their current president Zelensky had. So he can't carry out his campaign promise to end corruption in his country because Hunter Biden's on the board of directors. But we're told nothing to see here, nothing to see here. So I want to go through, I did a whole video on this, but again, since I have some new people watching, I want to go through John Solomon's reporting on this, just one of his articles particularly, and talk about all of the evidence, and I'll try to go through it fast. None of this has been disputed, which is the important thing to know. And so I want to go through it and just show how shady it is. So one, let's start with what I just said. Anytime an executive official threatens to withhold congressional approved aid unless a prosecutor is fired that's looking into his family member's company, there needs to be an investigation. But here's all the evidence beyond that. I'm going to skip through the top of this, but here's 27 facts I think that John Solomon talks about. I'll post the article to the chat so you all can read along if it's hard to read on my screen here. So 1 second, let me get it up for you. Whoop. There we go. All right. So beginning here. Fact 1. Hunter Biden was hired in May 2014 by Burisma Holdings, a Ukrainian natural gas company at a time when his father Joe Biden was vice president and overseeing U.S.-Ukraine policy. One of the things, before I continue, all of this, check the article out for yourself, but you can see it has hyperlinks. He sources everything he's saying here. Everything. None of it has been disputed. Instead, what they do is they just say, all of this is wrong. It's all conspiracy theory. I debated this YouTuber Destiny. That's what he said. Hasn't all this just been debunked as a conspiracy theory? That's when you have nothing to say, that's what you do. You just lie and say, oh, no, everything you say is wrong, and moving on. And then you brag, yeah, it's all debunked. Jake Tapper said it's all debunked, so it must be debunked. Really, here's specific facts. Can you tell me which one of them have been debunked? All of them. That's what they say. It's a joke. Here's the announcement. Hunter Biden's hiring came just a few short weeks after Joe Biden urged Ukraine to expand natural gas production and use Americans to help. You can read his comments to the Ukrainian Prime Minister here. Hunter Biden's firm then began receiving monthly payments totaling $166,000. You can see those payments here. So I was wrong. $166,000 a month. Fact 2. Burisma was under investigation by British authorities for corruption and soon came under investigation by Ukrainian authorities led by Viktor Shokin. Okay, so for none of those facts have been disputed. Fact 3. Vice President Biden and his office were alerted by a December 2015 New York Times article that Shokin's office was investigating Burisma and that Hunter Biden's role in the company was undercutting his father's anti-corruption effort. I've done videos on this, but you could click that hyperlink. It goes to, they talked to Biden. That's the New York Times in 2015 talking to Biden's spokesperson saying that Shokin's in charge of an investigation into his son's company. What do you think about it, Joe Biden? And Biden says, I don't talk to my, or his spokesperson says, I don't talk to my son about his business. Fact 4. The Biden-Burisma issue created an appearance of conflict of interest, especially for State Department officials. I especially refer to you to State official George Kent's testimony here. Remember, George Kent's one of the people that testified. That was the very first witness that testified in the impeachment trial. He testified he viewed Burisma as corrupt and the Bidens as creating the perception of a conflict of interest. His concerns both caused him to contact the vice president's office and to block a project that the state's USAID agency was planning with Burisma in 2016. In addition, Ambassador Yovanovitch testified she, too, saw the Bidens-Burisma connection as creating the appearance of a conflict of interest. You could read our testimony here. So even the people testifying against Trump admit there was a conflict of interest. So why wouldn't there be an investigation? Fact 5. The Obama White House invited Shokin's prosecutorial team to Washington for meetings in January 2016 to discuss their anti-corruption investigations. You read about it here. So they trusted in 2016, January, Obama administration was inviting Viktor Shokin and his team to the White House. They didn't think he was corrupt then, surely. Fact 6, the Ukrainian investigation of Hunter Biden's employer, Burisma Holdings, escalated in February 2016 when Shokin's office raided the home and company of owner Zlochevsky and seized his property. Here's the announcement of the aid, and I'll bring it up just so you can see. This is important. Now, the argument that we've been told over and over by the people that say, oh, Shokin was corrupt. He wasn't investigating Burisma. The investigation stopped. Let's see what the Ukrainian news agency has to say. This is from, what's the date in this? Looks like April 2nd, 2016. Or it'll tell us here. The movable and immovable property of former Minister of Ecology and Natural Resources of Ukraine, Mykola Zlochevsky, in Ukraine has been seized, according to the Prosecutor General's office. That's Shokin's office. The PGO filed a petition in court to arrest the property of the ex-minister, the Deputy Secretary Zlochevsky, from which arrest was withdrawn, and other property he actually uses, namely a housing estate, and blah, blah, blah. The PGO clarifies the court satisfied this on February 2nd, 2016. Now, keep in mind that date. We were told over and over. Remember, over and over we were told, weren't we? Oh, the investigation had stopped. Nothing was done. In February, Shokin seized the property of Zlochevsky. In February. Remember that date, February 2nd. Now let's go to fact 7. So that's a lie. We've been lied to. Remember they said everybody in the EU, Christine Lagarde at the IMF, and a bunch of people in Europe, and all these George Soros-connected groups, they all said Shokin was corrupt, and he wasn't really investigating Burisma or Zlochevsky anyways. Then why was he seizing their property? Fact 7. Shokin was making plans in February 2016 to interview Hunter Biden as part of his investigation. You can read his interview with him here, and there's a sworn court deposition. Fact 8. Burisma's American representatives lobbied the State Department, that's Obama's State Department, in late February 2016 to help end the corruption allegations against the company, and specifically invoked Hunter Biden's name as a reason to intervene. You could read State's official account of that effort here. So we have State Department documents from the Obama State Department admitting the lawyers for the company they're calling corrupt, Burisma, that's Obama. Obama's State Department and Obama himself said that Zlochevsky and his company Burisma, that Hunter Biden was on the board of directors for, was corrupt. Yet here they are lobbying the State Department to intervene. That's in late February. Early February, the prosecutor seizes property. The lawyers immediately contact the State Department in late February and say, hey, can you stop this investigation? So what happens? Fact 9. Joe Biden boasts in a 2018 videotape he forced Ukrainians to fire Shokin in March 2016 by threatening to withhold $1 billion. You can check the video out. So look at the timeline. February. Early February. Shokin and his office seizes the property of Zlochevsky. We're told, no, that couldn't have happened. Shokin, the investigation had been dormant for years. He wasn't doing anything. Then, almost immediately, later that month, the lawyers, the American lawyers for Zlochevsky, who just had his property seized, and for this company Burisma, they contact the State Department. They say, can you please help us stop this investigation? Hunter Biden works here. It can't be all that bad. Then in March, right after that, immediately following, these supposedly the lawyers for this corrupt, this is Biden, this is Obama calling Burisma corrupt. So the lawyers for that corrupt company get in touch with Obama's State Department. And all of a sudden, just coincidentally, the next month, Joe Biden comes out and issues a quid pro quo and says, fire Viktor Shokin. And that's not reason to investigate? None of this has been debunked. This is all proven true by evidence. All of it. It's outrageous. Now, we'll go on, but that's the important part. Does that make sense to you? Obama administration's calling Zlochevsky corrupt. They're calling Burisma corrupt. Hunter Biden gets a job with that corrupt company. Viktor Shokin, the prosecutor, starts physically seizing the assets, the home of the owner of Burisma, a man that the Obama administration has called corrupt and demanded be held accountable. The lawyers for that corrupt guy contact Obama's State Department and say, Hunter Biden works here. Can you please get this investigation dropped? Hunter Biden's dad comes out the next month and says, we're withholding $1 billion until you fire the prosecutor who just seized all of this property. And what happens? They fire him. Fact 10, Shokin stated in interviews with me in an ABC News that he was told that he was fired because Joe Biden was unhappy with the Burisma investigation wasn't shut down. He made this claim in a sworn deposition, which you could read. Fact 11, the day Shokin's firing was announced in March 2016, Burisma's legal representatives, the same ones that contacted the State Department before in February, they sought a meeting with the temporary replacement. You could read the emails proving it there. Fact 12, these same legal representatives secured that meeting a week later on April 6, 2016, and told Ukrainian prosecutors that, quote, false information had been spread to justify Shokin's firing, according to a Ukrainian government memo about the meeting. Do you get that? The lawyers that are working on behalf of Hunter Biden's company told the interim prosecutor, we know that they were lying about Victor Shokin, that he wasn't corrupt. This isn't Rush Limbaugh. This isn't Rudy Giuliani. These are lawyers working on behalf of Hunter Biden's interest. Telling the Ukrainian prosecutor that took over for Victor Shokin, yeah, the U.S. officials lied when they said he was corrupt. Who was that U.S. official? Who was it? Joe Biden. So basically, Joe Biden's son's lawyer are admitting Joe Biden lied about Shokin being corrupt, which is backed up by all the evidence that we could see. These representatives then offered to arrange for the remaining Ukrainian prosecutors to meet with the U.S. and state justice officials. We have a memo from the Ukrainian prosecutors showing this. So they say, yeah, we know Shokin really didn't do anything, but can you come with us and meet with State Department officials, the Obama State Department officials, to finally end this investigation? Again, Obama and through him, his State Department were saying Burisma was corrupt, but they have a working relationship with their lawyers? Fact 13, Burisma officials eventually settled the Ukrainian investigations in late 2016 and early 2017, paying just some taxes. Now, here's what Solomon doesn't get into. The investigation was eventually kicked to the NABU. The NABU was an organization that was funded with Obama's State Department money. What had happened was, this is just a quick crash course. You had this president, Yanukovych, who was president of the Ukraine, and he was ousted, and I forget what they called the revolution, but there was like a revolution in the Ukraine, and because Yanukovych was considered pro-Russian, and so then he's replaced by Poroshenko, who's pro-Obama. He's pro-West, right? Who gets screwed in this whole deal? The Ukrainian people. They just want a president like me and you would want, one that looks out for themselves, not for the U.S. or for Russia. That's why they elected Zelensky, a stand-up comedian. I thought this Poroshenko guy that Obama was supporting was supposed to be legit and the real deal. Why did he lose to a stand-up comedian who ran on one issue, government corruption? 75% of the vote. It's unheard of. So it just goes to show you that the people Obama are propping up, yeah, they were corrupt too. But anyways, part of the deal to sending them all this money was they had to start an anti-corruption investigative agency modeled after our FBI. That agency was called the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of the Ukraine, NABU. The NABU was repeatedly accused of burying cases into Obama officials or into Obama allies. The head of the NABU, Artem Sitnik, has admitted in audio, you can check out Glenn Beck's YouTube channel where he has the audio, admitted to interfering in the 2016 election to help Hillary. So needless to say, the NABU was the ally of the Obama administration, okay? Total allies. So, one of the lies that we're told by the Democrats, the media, the establishment is actually by Joe Biden wanting Victor Shokin fired. Victor Shokin wasn't doing anything to investigate Burisma. We know that's a lie, by the way, as I already proved to you. But he wasn't doing anything. So actually, by forcing him firing, Joe Biden was actually increasing the chances that his son's company got investigated. That's so laughable, it's unbelievable. Yeah, Joe Biden just wanted his son investigated harder. That's what was going on. But anyways, let's take for their word that that's what happened. So here's the Obama's narrative. Here's the Obama, Biden, the establishment, the Democrat, the media narrative. Oh, Burisma was corrupt, and the guy that ran at Zlochevsky is corrupt. But Hunter Biden wasn't doing anything corrupt there. And Joe Biden wanted Shokin fired, the prosecutor fired, because that's the reason that this corrupt company was allowed to continue, because the prosecutor was corrupt. And so actually, by getting rid of that prosecutor, he was making it more likely his son's company would be fired. So they get rid of Shokin, and they get the case kicked to their allies at the NABU that's supposed to fight corruption. So surely that's it, right? The NABU found that Zlochevsky and Burisma was corrupt, and they sent them jail time. No, the NABU almost immediately buries the case, has them pay a small fine. So surely then, Biden and Obama and all these people in the EU, remember we keep hearing about it? All these people in the European Union wanted Viktor Shokin fired because he was corrupt, and he wasn't prosecuting Zlochevsky. Surely all of them spoke up then once the NABU said, oh yeah, we're also not going to prosecute Zlochevsky. Did they all speak up? Can we pull up the articles of that? Oh wait, that never happened. And Biden wasn't furious. Huh. Now wouldn't you have been furious if you're Obama and Biden and you're like, look, the reason we withheld this $1 billion is because we felt these prosecutors weren't going after corrupt oligarchs like Zlochevsky. So they get rid of that prosecutor, and Obama's like, okay, now you can give them the $1 billion. So they get the $1 billion, and what do they immediately do? Have corrupt prosecutors not go after Zlochevsky again. So wouldn't Obama have been furious and like, wait a minute, we're not going to send you any more aid then. No, instead the aid continued unabated. Huh, almost like they just wanted the prosecutor out that was looking into Joe Biden's son. Isn't that interesting? Now, I'm not going to go on with this article, but I put the link there. I could talk about it all day, and I've done a video. You can check out my video, which maybe before I leave here at the very end when I got a little time, I will go put my full video up of that article. In fact, I could probably bring it up right now. But if you guys want to check out my full thoughts on that, I already have done a video. Wrong one? Just give me a second. I'll try to bring it up for you. Now, what's all this say? It all sounds very complicated. There's my full video you can check out on that article. What's my brother saying I did now? Who knows? I can't go. It won't let me scroll up. I assure you, JoJo is more of a pain than me. So anyways, I missed some of the chat there. I apologize about that. But do you understand what's going on here? One, just without any of the evidence, anytime an executive branch suggests that they're withholding congressional approved aid unless a prosecutor's fired that's looking into a company their family's associated with, there should be an investigation. If Joe Biden truly did nothing wrong, he understands that there was an appearance of a conflict of interest. He should come out and say, yeah, fair enough. You can investigate me. I didn't do anything wrong. But instead he's saying Trump should be impeached for wanting that investigation. What am I missing, John? Go ahead, of the Ukrainian corruption. I mean, and the other thing that goes along with this is, look, there's all sorts of, like, I've heard rumors that Pelosi's family's associated. John Kerry's son definitely, through marriage, was associated with this. We give all of this congressional aid to all these countries, and then they kick it back. And the easiest way to kick it back is through their family. So we're sending $1 billion over to their energy sector, money that could be spent here at home. I know homeless people here. I know people struggling with healthcare here. I know veterans that are struggling with care here. But instead of giving them money, we're sending this money to the Ukraine. Then we give that money to Ukrainian energy sectors who then hire our politicians' children and pay them millions of dollars for work that they're not doing. Oh, yeah, John, I did forget that part. Right. Yeah, and John says Zlochevsky's assets were frozen in 2014 in the U.S. That's right. He was considered corrupt. And Zlochevsky's admitted, or his people at Burisma admitted, that the reason that they hired Hunter Biden was to ensure basically that Zlochevsky didn't get in legal jeopardy within the United States. And that's exactly what happened. Like I said, the current Zelensky government admitted, their prosecutors admitted, we can't even go after Zlochevsky because of complications with Hunter Biden being on the board of directors. So there's all sorts of corruption. No donations to... Yeah. I can't do that. Blood's thicker than money, believe it or not. Yeah, you didn't do anything, Jess. They're just, or Jojo, they're just, I thought, I saw someone say my first act of corruption or something, Jojo, and I thought you said something, that's all. But anyways, now just real quick, I'm not going to get into the details, but that was part one. Part two is, did Ukraine interfere in the 2016 election? Remember, we were told over and over again that foreign interference into our elections is the most important thing. It's an attack on our country. It's an act of war when Russia supposedly did it. That's what we were told, right? That's what they said. We had to investigate we had to raid Trump's lawyers in the middle of the night. We had to leave no stone unturned. But now when we find out that Ukrainians are publicly admitted, even before the election in 2016, publicly admitting to interfering to help Hillary Clinton, and all of a sudden everyone says, it's not a big deal. Please check out that video I posted. I'm not going to go through it all today. I might do another video on it shortly, but I mean, you had a guy by the name of Sergei Lyshenko who admitted that in Financial Times, August 2016, so that's 2 months before the election, admitted to interfering to help Hillary. You had Artem Sitnik, the head of the NABU, admitting to interfering to help Hillary. You had Alexandra Chalupa, a DNC operative that we know through admissions of the Ukrainian State Department was contacting State Department officials trying to get dirt on Trump from Ukrainians, which eventually came from people like Lyshenko. Yet we're told not to believe our lying eyes. This is a running theme. Oh, don't believe Lyshenko's actual admission that he was interfering. So it's a conspiracy theory. Even when he publicly admitted, he didn't admit it to Alex Jones. This is the Financial Times, a mainstream publication in the United States. He admits during the election, yes, I, along with other Ukrainian politicians and with people at the anti-corruption agency, are interfering to help Hillary Clinton because we don't like the politics of Donald Trump. Admitted it. But we're told that's a conspiracy theory. Now, why is it? And you go back and you look at, for example, Fiona Hill's testimony. I did a video on this. And this is what's so discouraging. We have Dan Bongino is a good person to follow. And there are some good people. John Solomon's great. But even amongst people that are defending Trump, I don't see a lot of people making these points. Fiona Hill, before the public impeachment testimonies, testified behind the scenes. They asked her, what do you think about Lyshenko admitting to interfering in the election? She says, I'm not worried about that. My family voted based on health care and things like that, not election interference. The very next paragraph she says, oh my good, we don't even understand how big of a deal. We're not ready for Russia's election interference and what a huge crippling deal it is. More deep state garbage. They're totally fine with election interference that benefited their candidate, Hillary Clinton, but they didn't like the outsider Trump, just like the FBI. When they're investigating Hillary, they do everything to exonerate her they possibly can. They smash evidence for her. They give everyone immunity. When they're going after Trump, they call CNN to be outside while they raid his associates' houses in their underwear while they're all carrying AR-15s, like Roger Stone. They throw him in solitary confinement like Manafort. It's the same here. It's the same crap at the State Department. Now, the last thing I'll say about that is there's a prosecutor in the Ukraine named Lutsenko. Lutsenko, if you listen to Biden, right, in his famous speech where he admits to the quid pro quo, the last thing he says is they replaced him with a prosecutor who was solid at the time. Who was that solid prosecutor? Lutsenko. Lutsenko did a bunch of interviews with John Solomon. Lutsenko said that he was basically, Yovanovitch, the hero of the left, this noble woman who now we need to have an investigation of whether or not Giuliani was looking into her. She's noble, great. All her feelings were hurt so bad because she was fired. Lutsenko says Yovanovitch basically said, here's a list of people you can't prosecute. And they all happen to be people allied with George Soros or Obama. Then later, everyone said, oh, Lutsenko backtracked that. He said there was no list. Yeah, he clarified what he said was there was no physical list. She just gave a verbal list. Said, here are names of people you can't prosecute. Now, in the open testimony, in the impeachment hearings, all of them said that's not true. George Kent said that's not true. Yovanovitch said it's not true. They all said Lutsenko's a liar. That none of that happened. Yet George Kent testified in his closed-door meeting that's exactly what happened. Exactly. Oh, now I got to bring this back up. Let's see. One second. See if I can find this. I used to know the exact page. 76, maybe? I don't know. I'd have to look it up. But trust me when I tell you, George Kent admitted in his closed-door testimony, which you could read the transcript of, he admitted that, yes, they told Lutsenko, 3 people particularly, they said, don't prosecute Artem Sitnik, drop the investigation in him, drop the investigation into Lyshenko, and drop the investigation into a man named Shabunian. Shabunian was in charge of what was called the Anti-Corruption Action Center. The Anti-Corruption Action Center was funded jointly by your tax dollars via Barack Obama and George Soros. They were accused of financial crimes in the Ukraine. Our State Department went to them, admitted by George Kent, and said, stop looking into this guy. Stop it. Then George Kent and Yovanovitch testified in the open hearing, no, Lutsenko's a liar. We never told him to drop investigations. That's exactly what they did. They lied when they said they didn't. More people lying in front of Congress. But what's the lesson learned? Just look at John Brennan. Look at James Comey. It's okay to lie in front of Congress as long as you're a Democrat. As long as you're with the establishment. So the skinny of it is, as I've talked about over and over again, and I'll be doing more on impeachment as the new trial comes up, Trump had every right to want this investigation. If he wanted the investigation, then there is no cause for impeachment or for removal. This is why Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and Viktor Shokin and Lutsenko and Sergei Lyshenko, all of them should be called as witnesses. All of them. But because the Republicans spent so much time arguing whether or not it was a quid pro quo, now the argument is, well, we don't need to talk to the Bidens. Because if it's a quid pro quo, then the Democrats win. That's the argument. So you have Lev Parnas, right? And I did a video just on this the other day, so I won't spend much time on it. But Lev Parnas, who worked with Giuliani, then, like always, this is a recurring theme. They prosecute him on basically nonsense crimes that they never prosecute anyone else. They throw the book at him, and then they encourage him to flip, just like they did Michael Cohen. So now Lev Parnas is saying, I have some handwritten notes. We don't know if Lev Parnas is telling the truth, that his handwritten notes show a quid pro quo. Even in those notes, that's just conversations he had with Giuliani and not with Trump. And even if he was right, it doesn't explain what the intent behind Trump's quid pro quo would be if there was a quid pro quo, and therefore it's still not reason for removal. The GAO, the Government Accountability Office, this is the big story now. Oh, it's a bombshell. The GAO said that Trump withholding the aid was illegal. Can you point to me where the GAO investigation into Biden and Obama using a quid pro quo to withhold the aid was? Can anyone point that to me? Surely, right? If the GAO thought the potential quid pro quo of Trump was illegal, then surely they would have thought the one for Biden and Obama would be. See, even if we assume that what Trump did was a quid pro quo, which we don't have evidence of that, but even if we assume it, it wasn't successful. He didn't get the public acknowledgement from Zelensky, the president, that they're going to be investigating the Bidens or Burisma. He didn't get that. Obama and Biden did get what they want. Viktor Shokin got fired. So they actually had a successful quid pro quo. So is the argument it's okay to threaten to withhold the aid, just not actually do it as long as you get what you asked for? Strange the GAO didn't investigate. Huh. Isn't that weird? I don't remember the media and the Democrats calling for an investigation into that quid pro quo. Do you? But you know what the GAO did investigate? The Bo Bergdahl swap. And they said that was illegal. Now, one of the things you'll get constantly with these defenders of the Democrats and the establishment is this. They'll constantly say, oh, this is whataboutism. It's whataboutism. One, it's not whataboutism because we're talking directly about crimes that are... Trump's accused of doing something, investigating the Bidens, and so therefore whether or not the Bidens deserve to be investigated isn't whataboutism. That would be as stupid as, let's say, if you're a Democrat and you think that, think about this. Let's say the Republicans clean house in 2020. They win the House, the Senate, and Trump wins the presidency. And so let's say then Republicans in the House say, you know what, we're going to vote to impeach Adam Schiff and a bunch of these other Democrats because they had a corrupt investigation into Donald Trump and they did it for personal gain. And the Democrats would say, but wait a minute, here's the reasons we wanted to investigate Trump. And the Republicans said, that's whataboutism. We don't want to hear what you claim Trump did wrong. How do you defend yourself when you're accused of wanting an immoral or a corrupt investigation of someone, but you're not allowed to say what they did that you wanted to investigate? That's whataboutism. That's the argument the Democrats, when you watch my debate with that Destiny guy, that's exactly what everything he said. That's whataboutism. That's whataboutism. No, it's not. If Biden committed crimes, then Trump's right to want to investigate them. Oh, that's whataboutism. You're deflecting to Obama and Biden. The other thing is, I'm not talking about specifically the crimes of Biden and Obama. We're talking about whether or not impeachment and removal is warranted. This is a political process. And so it is not whataboutism to say, okay, the very people that are voting for impeachment and are clamoring for removal said the exact opposite when their party did the exact same things Trump did. And you see the left use this I shouldn't say the left. You see the establishment left use this all the time. I've said from the get-go, if Trump committed crimes, he should be held accountable for them on any of these or any of his associates. All I want is equal application of the law. Every single time we see them make the excuse, well, okay, the FBI decided not to prosecute Mills and Aberdeen for lying to the FBI, but they did decide to prosecute Cohen for lying to the FBI and Flynn, even though Flynn didn't. And so if I bring up a problem, my focus is on the corruption of the FBI for doing that. They'll say, oh, that's whataboutism. That's whataboutism. Did Cohen lie to the FBI? There, that's all that matters. That's constantly the way things are done in Washington. They selectively apply these laws, and then they say, well, technically they broke the law. The same thing's done on Twitter, if it gives you a better understanding. You go through and you could be like, okay, here's something offensive someone on the right said on Twitter and they got banned. But here's something on the left that's 10 times more offensive and they didn't get banned. And watch the Jack Dorsey interview on Rogan's show. He had that lady with him. She'd be like, technically what that person on the right did was, technically that's against our terms of service. So, yeah, you're probably right because the way the terms of service are written, technically that's true. But the person on the left broke it in a worse way and you let it slide. That's what's aggravating. If you applied the law equally, or in this case with Twitter, the rule equally, then fine. There wouldn't be room for complaints. But basically, someone on the left's allowed to call me an a-hole. That's fine. And if I call them an a-hole in response, I get banned. That's what's ridiculous. It's the same with our legal system. The left could lie to the FBI. All the intel people, they could lie to Congress. They could break all these laws, 17 times breaking the law. They could lie to FISA courts. All of this crap. And no one's held accountable. So that's the ridiculous nature. It's not whataboutism. It's worth talking about. And as far as the GAO with the Bergdahl swap, yeah, that was illegal under Obama. Did I want Obama impeached for that? No. And though I found it heinous, I didn't think that rose to the level of impeachment. But impeachment is a political process. It's not a legal standard. And so it's at the whims of those that are voting. And that's what makes it outrageous. All of a sudden, we now have to pretend, because the Democrats control the narrative, that, oh, the GAO saying you broke a law is reason for impeachment. Even though that's what happened under Obama. Even though the Washington Post was writing articles saying, yeah, the GAO said that Obama's Bergdahl swap was illegal, but nothing will really happen. But now we have to pretend the somber Democrat. This is a somber moment. This is new bombshell evidence. By the way, there are already things in the law that show what should happen if you break the type of laws that the GAO is accusing Trump of breaking. And impeachment's not the remedy. All right. That's what I got in impeachment. No, I got a couple of comment, Rob. Tom Jacobs. One of the prosecutors overseeing the case of the former... Yeah, I saw that, right? And that's something you see, right? So what John's saying is, I think this Natalie Edwards, who was formerly at the Treasury, she was leaking evidence, I think, or leaking material to the press, I believe is what our charge was. And one of the people charged with prosecuting her is Comey's daughter. This is very similar to what this guy, Chris, right, who was on television. He's from Lawfare, the blog Lawfare. He was on television saying Devin Nunes was wrong in his memo. He was defending the FISA applications. Now he's the person the FISA court picked to investigate FISA abuses. And this is what you always see. It's the fox guarding the henhouse, right? Who watches the Watchmen? That's why the biggest issue we have is investigating and outing corruption in the intel agencies. All right, I'll get fired up here again. Like, I have this video. It's out of context, but I did this whole 2.5 hour live stream on the FBI when the FISA abuse, the IG report came out on it. And I ended up screaming a little, and my buddy Cherub edited it. I sound like Alex Jones, but it is one of the most infuriating things I've ever seen. It is the biggest issue in this country right now. The most powerful investigative agency in the history of the world that has the power to spy on you, to wiretap you, to bankrupt you, to take your freedom away in ways you can't even imagine, we now know are completely corrupt. 17 times they lied to a FISA court. Blatantly, including manufacturing evidence to say the opposite of what it says. And they did that to a president and a presidential campaign in order to spy on him. What do you think they could do to you? These are the people, when we have corruption, this is the pool of people that we have that are supposed to be investigating the corruption. And where is the national outcry? The media and the Dems argument is, oh, it's cool. They're just incompetent. The FBI relied solely on the Steele dossier to spy on Carter Page. They admitted they talked to the subsource. Keep in mind, all right, here's the context of this. If you saw this video of me yelling about this, here's the context. Christopher Steele himself has no firsthand knowledge of anything. Everything he reported to the FBI and to the State Department that was the central case to get the wiretap on Carter Page. And let me backtrack here for a second. Look up Bill Binney from the NSA. He'll tell you exactly what that means when they're able to wiretap you with the FISA warrant. He calls it the two-hop rule. That means that they not only could listen to everything you say to people on the phone, but also everything they say, and everything that everyone they talk to says. So if I get a FISA warrant against me, and I'm talking to John Jacobs here, they spy on me, they spy on John Jacobs, and then John Jacobs hangs up the phone and calls Clearly Clever. They're allowed to spy on Clearly Clever. That's what they did, based on lies. So they got Trump. They got his whole campaign. That's what this was about. Wiretapping the whole campaign. That's what they did. All based on this Kremlin source Steele dossier. That's what the IG report said. No one's disputing that. Now we know. So two things happened that are worth talking about. There's 17 abuses. Here's the two big ones. One, the FBI knew that Carter Page previously worked with the CIA to help bring down corrupt Russians. They knew it. They left it out of the applications. Instead, they said, oh, Carter Page is shady. He had contact with corrupt Russians. Yes, to help the CIA. But they left that part out. So then, one noble FBI agent is like, whoa, didn't this guy work for the CIA? And they're like, maybe. So he emails the CIA. CIA gets back to him, and they say, yes, he was a CIA asset. What does the FBI do? What's the FBI lawyer do? He changes the email to say, no, actually, he wasn't an asset for the CIA. And then gives that to the FISA court. Now think about this for a second. This would be like if there were fingerprints found at a crime scene, right? And the cops are like, oh, Rob committed this crime. We're going to get these fingerprints, and they're going to be his, and he's going down. And so they run the fingerprints, and they're not mine. It would be terrible if those cops didn't then report to the prosecutors, yeah, we checked the fingerprints and they weren't Rob's. If they just said, you know what, we're just not going to mention the fingerprints. That would be horrible corruption. But even worse would be, you know what, we're going to say, yeah, they were Rob's fingerprints. That's what the FBI did. They didn't just ignore that Carter Page was a CIA asset. They changed evidence to say that he wasn't. Thanks, Fluid. Thanks for calling out my show. I really appreciate it. That's the opposite of the truth. That's what the people in the CIA or in the FBI did. That's not even the worst thing they did. You want to know what the worst thing they did was? Christopher Steele, he has no firsthand knowledge of anything. All of his information came from, quote, sub-sources. All of the claims about the Trump team engaging in corruption and illegal behavior to steal the election came from two Kremlin sub-sources, predominantly from one Kremlin sub-source. Even the P allegation came from a Kremlin sub-source. Okay? Now, the P allegation, so this gets sent, the warrant gets sent to the FISA court. The FISA court says, okay. Eventually, after the first FISA warrant, every 3 months it has to be renewed. So eventually, they go to the sub-source. Now, at this point, Christopher Steele's opinions are irrelevant. Picture this. There's a break-in at my neighbor's house, right? And the cops come to me and they say, did you see anything? And I say, I didn't see anything, but my other neighbor said they saw a person in a black van drive away, right? Then they go talk to my neighbor. I'm out of the discussion now. I admit it. I didn't see anything, but that guy told me he said X. Right? So the cops would go talk to that guy. That's exactly what happened here. Christopher Steele says, I didn't hear anything, but my source tells me that this is what was going on. So the FBI goes and talks to the Kremlin source. And you know what that source tells them? This is all garbage. I can't believe you're spying on people based on this. No, the P thing was a joke at a bar. There was no improper connections between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin officials. That's it. That's the end of the case. The FBI should have right there been like, oh, okay, that's it. Right? That's it. That should be the end of it. I'm not making any of this up. Read the IG report. This is what happened. But instead of that, the FBI said, we're still going to push for the warrant to wiretap Carter Page. After knowing that all the claims were BS, they still wanted the wiretap. So they go to the FISA court. They say, we talked to the subsource. The subsource seemed really honest and truthful. And that's it. They don't say, oh, and by the way, the thing that he was truthful about was that we lied. We were wrong. They let that part out. So much so that even Horowitz said he was deeply troubled by this. This is the entire case. To wiretap 3 times after this. 9 months the wiretap continued after they knew it was all bullshit. 9 months. The most powerful investigative agency in the history of the world wiretapped the President of the United States. And they knew, they lied. They told the opposite of the truth. They didn't just lie. They didn't just withhold facts. They told the opposite of the truth. And the media and the Democrats and academia and Silicon Valley and all those groups, they say, oh, nothing to see here. It was just some mistakes. Good old-fashioned incompetence. That's all. The That's not incompetence. And if it is, and this is what's infuriating, why would you ever trust the FBI ever again? A kindergarten student knows not to tell the opposite of the truth. You mean to tell me that 4 hand-picked teams at the highest levels of the FBI didn't know that you're not supposed to change evidence to say the opposite of what it says? But despite the fact that's how incompetent they are, don't worry, they're looking into the Las Vegas shooter. They'll get to the bottom of it. Don't worry, they're looking into these hacks. They know Russia did it. How can we accept? Why should we ever trust anything the FBI ever says again? What's the incentive? And that's if I take the Democrats' view on the FBI. Well, they were just incompetent. It was just a mistake. If you're that incompetent that the highest people, hand-picked teams, and admittedly the biggest investigation they've ever done, knowing that they're going to be heavily scrutinized, doing this to the President of the United States, and no one's fired up like me? Hopefully you are. You know, I've had people tell me, like, you don't have to yell about this. Yes, I do. I'm furious. Why? What is my country then? Now, why do I bring this up, John Jacobs? Here's why. Because, like you said, now Jim Comey's daughter's prosecuting investigations into someone formerly at the Treasury Department. Why do I trust her? Why do I trust the very people that were this corrupt or incompetent, if I believe the left, but they're going to get to the bottom of other investigations? I wouldn't trust them to investigate a scratch on my bumper. It's corruption of the highest order. And not one of them's been held accountable. We deserve the names of every single person that was on those FBI teams that engaged in this corruption or incompetence, if you believe the left. None of them should ever have a job in any law enforcement ever again. They should all be in prison. But no one's even talking about it. And instead, without batting an eye, they go on to the next case and say, well, the FBI said this. Now listen, I'm going to say something that maybe is not popular amongst Trump fans here. When Trump bombed Soleimani, I don't know what my reaction is. I know our embassy was attacked. I know Iran's militias that they back were responsible for it. And so there needed to be some sort of response. I get that. I don't know if killing Soleimani was the right response. But here's what I do know. Why am I going to believe our intel agents when they say, oh, and Soleimani was going to commit X, Y, and Z attacks? I don't believe them. At all. Just because it justifies Trump's actions, I don't give a shit. They don't deserve trust about anything ever again. At all. It's that simple. I don't care if they agree with me. I still don't trust them. They are corrupt. They will do whatever is necessary to maintain their power. Why do I believe them? Oh, well, you know, Russia hacked the DNC server. If the Democrats that make that argument, their argument is the FBI's so incompetent, they didn't know they weren't supposed to manufacture evidence to say the opposite of what it did. But despite being that stupid, trust them when they know how to do complicated investigations into hacking. Why would we believe that? And they'll go on, the intel agencies will go on to say, you need to bomb this country, or Russia attacked us here, or Trump did something bad here, or a Republican did something bad here, or we need to get conservatives off YouTube because they're a threat to incite violence, or because there's credible threats of violence in Virginia and so we can't leave people open carry. Why do I believe anything these people say? That's why this is the biggest issue in the country. It reflects everything. What's your issue? Climate change? Second Amendment? Pro-life? Pro-choice? whatever, left or right, it doesn't matter. With the people charged with keeping us safe and keeping us having faith in the government that corruption isn't occurring are in fact the most corrupt people, then nothing else matters. And yeah, you're right, Umpire's Post. That doesn't mean that the intel agencies are automatically wrong. They could be right that Russia hacked the DNC. The point is, I don't take their word anymore. You show me the proof or I don't believe you. I used to have this boss. He'd tell me all the time, did you ever hear of a 6-star general? Yeah, my uncle was a 6-star general. He had Osama bin Laden in his scope for like 3 days one time, but they wouldn't let him pull the trigger. And it's like, okay, dude. Like, that guy has the exact same amount of credibility as our intel agencies as far as I'm concerned. He might stumble onto saying something that's truthful once in a while, but I ain't going to believe that dude, just like I ain't going to believe the FBI just on their word. Sorry. That's what's going on with the FBI. So yeah, I don't trust Comey's daughter to come to a fair conclusion. And by the way, and this is going to be another thing that maybe Trump supporters don't want to hear. If the end of this comes around and Comey doesn't go to prison, or at least isn't charged, and Ray isn't fired, and Rosenstein isn't charged, and all these people aren't charged, and they're allowed, Brennan, all these crimes that we go down for, lying to Congress, lying to the FBI, all the other stuff that everyone failing to register as sworn lobbyists, all this crap, if they're allowed to get away with it, then Trump has only himself to blame when he's attacked again. I'm sick and tired of, we outed the corruption, now it's all solved. No, it's not. It's worse now. Jim Comey was laughing when the IG report came out. He called it a victory. A report that showed how incredibly incompetent and corrupt that him and his agency was, and he celebrated. They're laughing at us. They know there's nothing we could do. Until they're held criminally accountable, it will happen over and over and over again. And as long as people are like, well, ho-hum, no big deal, then no one will be held accountable. Yeah, thanks. I am growing. My channel is growing. This is definitely the most people I've ever had watching a live stream of mine. Now, the other thing I'll say is, some people worry if I have good mental health or blood pressure because I'll fly off the handle and then I get relaxed real quick. I'm fine. This is cathartic to me. I'll go play with my dogs when I'm done with this video and have a good time. But it should piss you all off. It really should. The abuses are incredible. Where are your representatives if they're Republicans? Why aren't they on television every day talking about this? Where are they? Instead, they leave what? Anderson Cooper had the last word on it? The Democrats? Adam Schiff? The same people that pushed the lies for 3 years? It was just a mistake by the FBI. Anyways, on to impeachment news. It's garbage. And if you don't think the State Department people that are testifying against Trump aren't in the same damn deep state clique that the FBI intel agencies are, you got another thing coming. It's all one big deep state establishment crap. They're all corrupt. They're interested in maintaining their power. Yes, the establishment Democratic Party is the face of that, but it is not a left-right issue. It is an establishment versus those fighting the establishment issue. It's globalism. They want to erode national sovereignty. They want the end of the middle class. They don't want your vote to matter. They want you totally reliant on the government and placated. They want you to be so used to the corruption that it doesn't even bother you anymore. And in many ways, they're winning. That's why independent creators are so important. not just me. If you don't want to support me, that's fine. Maybe I'm not your cup of tea. That's fine. Maybe you're on the left. You're important too. If you realize this corruption, I don't care if you're on the right or the left. We could disagree on the issues. I'd love to get back to a time where I actually trusted my government and we could have good faith discussions on, well, what kind of policy should we have economically? What kind of trade policy? But we can't even trust anyone in our government. So we can't even get to the level of discussing policy. Who cares what your trade policy is when it won't be enacted unless the corrupt FBI is okay with it? Rand Paul came out. He said, guess what? The Republicans are going to drop the ball again in the impeachment thing. They'll let the Democrats get every witness they want, and they ain't going to call Joe Biden. They ain't going to call Hunter Biden. Over and over, because it's not a left-right issue. Don't be mistaken. Some of these Republicans in the Senate will talk a good game, but they want Trump gone as much as the next person. They like their cozy relationship where they can be in Washington and get filthy rich and don't have to do anything and can pretend they're adversaries with the Democrats that are the same. Mitt Romney and Chuck Schumer, you think they're really adversaries? And that's one thing, if I can impart, that's one thing I think I do a little different than some of the other YouTube people that I really like. I really am trying to make bridges to people on the left, to people from groups that normally wouldn't, I'm a Republican, but normally wouldn't vote for Republican. We need to get allies where we can. We can have those discussions about economics and stuff later. We need to end this corruption now, or none of that matters. So I'm going to skip the fourth thing I had here, I think. But I do want to get to two other things. Oh my God. So as bad as this FBI story is, and it's about as bad as it gets, I just want to briefly talk about the UK for a minute. Because it illustrates two problems in the United States. So I'm not even going to precursor this. Just read the article. From The Independent, fears over race relations affected police probe into child sex grooming gang, report suggests. Investigation identified 57 potential victims and 97 suspects in Manchester, but almost no action taken amid fears of inciting racial hatred. This is from 3 days ago. Dozens of teenage girls suspected of being groomed and abused in Manchester by gangs of men from Asian background, Muslims is what they mean, were failed because the police feared upsetting race relations, a new probe suggested. Victims repeatedly alerted officers about sexual assaults, giving names and addresses of those involved, but in almost all cases, no action was taken. Now, a bombshell, is it a bombshell? We all knew this was the truth, over and over again. And a bombshell report suggests Greater Manchester Police and the City Council shelved an investigation into what was happening, at least partially because of the many sensitive community issues they felt faced with. Concerns were expressed about the risk of proactive tactics or the incitement of racial hatred. And it adds, the authorities knew that many victims were being subjected to the most profound abuse and exploitation, but did not protect them from perpetrators. This is a depressingly familiar picture and has been seen in many other towns and cities across the country. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with the UK grooming scandal. Where are we at now? Like 6, 7 cities? Rotherham was the first, Telford, that one was Manchester. At this point, I would say it's fair to say tens of thousands of victims, at least thousands. I mean, Rotherham and Telford alone had thousands over 3 decades of girls between the ages of like 17. The youngest I've seen was 9. The Manchester, I think the one was 11. For those of you who don't know what grooming is basically gang raping over and over again. That's what occurred for 3 decades. And over, the police said, and the council people said, oh, we didn't do anything, even though we knew about it because we didn't want to look racist. We were afraid we'd inspire racial hatred. Now, let me just, before I fly off the handle here, let me just say, I understand. I personally know at least one. I don't know many Muslims personally. I know one who's one of the nicest people you'll ever meet, who is disgusted by this as you are. Just like I know Catholics that are disgusted by the scandal with the priest. So I'm not saying being a Muslim automatically makes you a child pedophile or that you're okay with it. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying it is clear that there is a religious component to these crimes. The victims over and over said, they cited the Quran. They said that this was biblical, that I was their property. The fact that we're unwilling to call them out, this shows dangers in the United States as well, where we allow these abuses to occur. We allow the most insane things. Look at like the transgender issue. We're actually, at this point, we could put grown adult men into showers with young girls because they identify as a young girl. That's where we're heading. And the predictable abuse that comes from then will be on our hands that let that occur. Thousands of girls raped. I don't have to tell you that these people deserve the harshest punishment that could be inflicted on someone because it is the most heinous crime you could commit. But I'm not going to spend my time talking about the Muslim rape gangs, okay? We know how heinous and terrible they are. I want to talk about the police and the council people. I've been saying this for years. You know what this illustrates to me? Why am I talking about this? What does this have to do with us? Why can't we get people fired up about these abuses of the FBI? The UK is probably, maybe Canada, the country most closely similar to the United States. They're people very similarly culturally to us. Of course, there's differences, but British common law is the basis for our system. A lot of our congressional systems were in response to them, but a lot were actually inspired by the British system, etc. Close allies of us, close cultural exchanges, the Beatles, you know. Let me just tell you a story of some of the stuff I've read about this. So imagine that you live in a town that's like, you know, I don't remember the exact amount. I looked it up, the populations, but imagine you lived in a town the size of like in my state, like Harrisburg or maybe Columbus or I don't know, not a huge city, but a small city. And in that town, you found out that thousands of girls had been raped for over 3 decades, right? And maybe your daughter or maybe your niece, you know, maybe your friend's daughter, your coworker's daughter. And so you go to the police and the police treat you and your daughter like the criminal or you and the girl like a criminal, right? And this occurs over and over again. So then you decide, you know what? We're going to take matters into our own hands. We're going to mobilize ourselves. You don't have guns because, you know, you're in the UK, so that's a problem. But you go to these grooming houses yourself. So you get arrested. You get charged. So then you decide to have protest. Then you get smeared by your media as a racist. Then the police stop your protest. That's what happened. Tommy Robinson, and he said some things I don't like, but he brought attention to this issue. And whatever you think of him, the fact that there is more hatred and vitriol to him who's fighting rapists of children and the police that covered for them, and there are people celebrating him getting thrown in prison. Well, not one damn cop or council person's been thrown in prison that allowed this shit to occur. Shows everything you need to know about why corruption in this country can occur the way it is. If you can't get people fired up about 3 decades of thousands of girls being raped over and over again, what can you get people fired up about? Not one of these police officers has gone to prison. Not one of these councilmen. How is that possible? Thousands of young girls gang raped over and over again. I don't understand. you doing in your town, in Telford or Rotterdam, that you don't have better things to do than go grab these people and throw them in prison? Instead, you'll spend all your time celebrating when Tommy Robinson gets locked up. Maybe you think he deserved to be locked up because technically he broke the law. I could go on and on about it. And yes, he said things I disagree with. But if your hatred's reserved for him instead of the actual pedophiles or the police that protected them, what the hell is wrong with you? Sorry, Kraken. My buddy did tell me. Pull the mic around a little when yeah, I apologize. This is a tough topic. But it's worth talking about. Why? Read the report. Why did this go on? Because it was a tough topic and the police didn't want to deal with it. And so what's the consequence of that? And I apologize if it's brings up bad memories in people, but it needs to be talked about. What do we do? What if you can't motivate people to get fired up about that? No one's been brought to justice. And you have to understand, these elites, the people that run these shows, what is the refugee business about? What is the open border stuff that's going on in the EU and in the United States about? It's about elimination of the middle class. That's what they want. They want a globalist system. They want to erode national borders. They understand the biggest impediment to national borders are middle class people that take pride in their countries, whether it be the United States, the UK, France, Germany, wherever. They understand that. And so you need to decimate those people financially, but you also need to demoralize them, and you need to do so from within. It's not going to be enough to bring in outsiders to, take out the middle class. That's not going to happen. So what do? You infiltrate academia. You get to them when they're young. You start talking to them when they're kids. Have shame in your country. Have shame in yourself. The way you're born makes you bad. You're white, you're middle class, you're terrible. You're male, you're terrible. You're straight, you're terrible. You're Christian, you're terrible. Over and over again. To the point, how successful can this programming be? You watch little girls get raped over and over. You know that it's occurring. And you say, well, it's okay. The people that are raping them are oppressed. So it's okay. We don't want to hurt their feelings. Norm Macdonald had an awesome joke. I forget the name of the lady that he had on, but he had this comedian on. And she's being super progressive. And Norm Macdonald, in a way only he could do. She doesn't even get that he's making fun of her. He says, I have this friend, and his biggest fear is that ISIS or Al-Qaeda will get a biological bomb or a dirty bomb and launch it over an American citizen and kill a bunch of people. And his fear is then that will spark an anti-Islamic backlash. And she's like, yeah. Do you get the joke? The fear is not that the people will die. The fear is that what will people think of Islam afterwards? Now, yes, is it worth worrying about like racial components of people being racist as a result of some of these things? Sure. But you're a police officer or you're a council person in a city and you see the gang rape of underage girls and you say, geez, it would be nice to solve that crime. But if we did, some people might get upset about the people committing it. But yeah, I am sorry, Kevin. I didn't mean to, but I can't change my topics just for something like that. So I do apologize if you don't like a particular topic. I'll be talking about other stuff soon. But why is this relevant? For two things, like I said. One, it shows where this social justice insanity will go. Remember, you oftentimes you come up with hypothetical situations. You're like, look, if we start saying people are guilty until proven innocent, it could lead to, and then you cite some like hypothetical situation that seems ridiculous, but it could happen, right? We're at the point in the United States, here was a hypothetical situation you could have said happened. look, we got to watch it with this cultural Marxism or with this social justice crap, identity politics, because if not, we could get to the point where literally you could have black adult racists yelling at white children and you would take the side of the racist. And people would say, come on, that never happened. That happened. That's Covington. That's exactly what happened. White kids deserve to be attacked and had racial slurs thrown at them because they're white kids, because they're Trump supporters. You could say, we'll get to the point where this social justice crap is so ridiculous that you'll watch a population of young children for 3 decades be raped. And you won't say anything because you don't want to. The bigger crime than the rapes, the offending the rapers. And people would laugh at you. They'd say, that is so ridiculous. That's exactly what happened in the UK. Over and over and over and over again. One of the things I said, and hear me out, you might not like hearing this. If Comey, if these people in the intel agencies aren't arrested, if they aren't criminally charged, in many ways, when it comes to this issue of corruption in the intel community, we would have been better off to have Hillary Clinton elected than Donald Trump. And let me tell you why. If Hillary Clinton was elected, none of the corruption would have been made public. None of it. At all. And so we would have continued with the hope that if the corruption's ever made public, people will be outraged. That would have been a hope we could have had in the future. But with Donald Trump, it's all more obvious than it's ever been in my entire lifetime. Not just the intel agency corruption, but the corruption of the media, the corruption of academia, the corruption of the entertainment industry, the corruption of Silicon Valley, how they're all just one big mouthpiece working for the corrupt deep state. It's all blatant. It's obvious. And if it's made this obvious and nothing's done about it, we're in a lot of trouble. So think about it. You're a corrupt person in the intel agency, and you're like, oh, Trump got elected. It might out all this corruption. And then all of a sudden you look, you're like, wait, what's happening? The corruption's being outed and no one cares? Oh, wait, everybody knows we're corrupt and no one's going to do anything about it? Great. We don't have to have the pretense of pretending now. We'll just continue to be corrupt in the open. Who cares? Now, you might say that never happened. But if you're the type of person that would say that would never happen, you're probably also the type of person that would say, what's that? Police officers in a community knew that underage girls were being gang raped over and over for 3 decades and they did nothing because they didn't want to offend the rapist? You probably believe that as well, right? But guess what? That's exactly what happened. Bullshit. I don't know if you're saying that to me or someone else. Yeah, I hear you, SJG. I know that's, and people should check out your channel as well. That's something that you focus on even more than me. But there's dangers to this stuff. You can't accept it. Now look, I know I get fired up and I yell. No, sorry, Kraken, if I yelled a little too for your headphones. But it infuriates me beyond belief. How this could go, it blows my mind. It looks like Trump will win a second term. It does. I'm hoping he does. But one thing, I think I'm knowledgeable politically. I think I have a unique way of looking at things. But I'll be the first to admit to you, I had the 2016 election completely wrong. I desperately wanted Trump to win. But I assumed that the cheating would be so bad and the corruption would be so bad that he would lose, even if it meant just straight up using the Diebold voting machines to change votes. I think that their hubris was their downfall. They assumed they had it in the bag, and then they underestimated how furious people were at the establishment, and that's what caused Trump's victory. Maybe this time they won't have such hubris. Maybe this time they'll get the corruption in full swing. So I don't know. Hopefully Trump wins. But yeah, so that's what I'm about here. I was going to talk, I could basically mention this briefly. CNN, it's funny to watch CNN screw over Bernie, and now Bernie supporters be like, Can you believe CNN's so corrupt? It's like, yeah, congratulations. They gave Bernie 1/10,000th of what they give Trump. But the Bernie supporters aren't self-aware enough. Just like I told all the left-wing people, I said, be careful cheering for the corrupt intel community and their coup of Trump just because you hate Trump, because they'll do it to your candidate next. And they said, no. I said, be careful of cheering on a corrupt media smearing people like Kavanaugh and Trump because they'll do it to your candidate next. Oh, no. And predictably, that's exactly what happens. Now they're shocked. They can't believe it. They're dismayed. Then McSally told... I don't know if you saw this. Senator McSally, Manu, whatever, from CNN was like, blah, 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 impeachment. And she was like, yeah, you're a liberal hack. Get out of my face. And CNN's got nuts with that. Meanwhile, CNN had no problem with people like Elizabeth Warren or Beto O'Rourke or insert Democratic presidential candidate said, we won't go on Fox News because they're corrupt and blah, blah, blah. They're just a mouthpiece for Trump. They don't care that politicians have called Fox News terrible for years. By the way, Fox News is predominantly terrible. There's some people on there I like, but yeah, they suck too. But then CNN didn't care about that. Now all of a sudden, Anderson Cooper last night's, we're the free press. We're great, amazing people. How dare a senator say this to us? Again, lacking total self-awareness. Yes, you're right, Anderson Cooper. A free press is important. However, you're wrong. You're not a free press, and you haven't been. Neither has anyone in the mainstream media for decades. And that's why people like me are necessary. Because you control the information and you lie. You're just propagandists. You don't speak truth to power. You keep the truth hidden for the powerful. That's your job. And for what's going on in the chat, I don't have any mods or anything. I didn't read exactly what's going on. I hope everyone's getting along, but yeah, no, if people are leaving because of the chat, I'm sorry about that, but I'm not going to go back through and try to make a determination. So, but mods are something that I will get in the future, but I'm sorry if I contributed to anyone. But okay. So yeah. And then the last thing, this is just a little aside. Maybe I'll make a video on it. It's just something I thought was funny. Did anybody else think it was funny? By the way, Elizabeth Warren's clearly lying. I have no love for Bernie, but she's clearly lying about this whole Bernie said women can't win. There's a lot of negative things to say about Bernie. I don't think he would ever say that. It's clear that she leaked this story. It's clear that her confronting Bernie after the debate was all set up with the help of CNN. It's clear that CNN smeared Bernie and tried to make it seem as if Elizabeth Warren was telling the truth. All of that's true. But and you've heard it from everyone, but here's something that I found humorous. When she starts doing that, and I commented on the time, it was like, then Elizabeth Warren starts with her argument, basically, vote for me because of my genitals, like identity politics to the max. So the implication seems to be, it would be immoral for someone to say, well, a man has a better chance of beating Trump because of XYZ. That would be misogynist. Yeah, isn't that exactly what Elizabeth Warren did? In the opposite? Isn't that misandrist? Because she was like, by the way, women are the only ones that actually win and blah, 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 and starts talking about how much better it is to be a woman than a man. Now, I don't care, but I'm not thin-skinned. But if your argument's going to be, it would be horrible and immoral for a man to say, here's why a man stacks up better against Donald Trump. Why is it not immoral to stand up and say, here's why a woman stacks up better than Trump? I mean, I don't know why no one called her out on that. So, but, all right, I went 2 hours, 47 minutes, so I'll be finishing up. I do have some important things to say though. So first, I want to say I got to 1,000 subscribers. I have so many more people. For those of you that are new here, understand that last week, a live stream of mine, I'd have been lucky to have 7 to 12 people. So at some point, I think it was up to 70. So thank you all so much. I hope that people kind of got a good idea of what I do here, and I hope that you appreciate it. I want to give my schedule real quick for the new people. So first, thank you to anyone who's a new subscriber, and certainly thanks. SJG, yeah, I could probably do a stream with you Saturday. Yep, I think I'm going to be snowed in. But yeah, thanks for the offer, SJG. I'll get in touch with you later today, but I think I'd love to do that. So thank you to all of my previous subscribers. Thank you to all my current. Real quick, I know I'm going to get better at this, so I'm going to pitch myself. I really could use your support on Patreon and PayPal. I need all sorts of things. I need editing software. I need lighting equipment. I need stuff where I'm on the road to be able to have like better microphone and camera. I want to get a new desktop so I could be able to run the programs. I promise to be as transparent as possible with any of the money that I get, and to reach out to anyone who is a Patreon or PayPal subscriber to me. So please consider that. If not, no big deal. You can follow me on BitChute and Twitter. All of that's in the description of this video. So please, if you could do that. And if you could, if you like what I'm doing, check out some of my older videos. I think you'll like them. And share some of my videos with people as well as liking and subscribing. One other thing, I always welcome doing videos with other people. If someone would want to do a video with me, please let me know. Just contact me here on the channel. Put after the live stream, just put in the comment section, and I'll try to get in touch with you. I might not agree with you. We might disagree on things, but that's perfectly fine. It could be a topic that I don't know much about. That would be fine too. Remember, and I can't stress this enough, consider doing your own channel. Consider doing what you can to get the truth out there, right? Maybe you're not someone who's comfortable talking on screen like this, but you could do other things. You could help me or other people, and that's one of the things I'm going to ask for. Like, I could use help with people that have ideas on how to improve my channel. American Joe helped me out with some things like I need to get an introduction. He suggests that I name my show. So I don't know what your all's feelings are on, should I just continue to just be Robert Knorr, or should it be the something show with Robert Knorr? So if you have ideas for anything like that, put it in the comment section after the video and I'll check it out. Or if you have anything technologically that you think you could do to help me out, or just suggestions, I'd be totally fine with it. John Jacobs put my email up there. It's rob.knorr@gmail.com. Feel free to email me at any time. And I'll start putting that on my videos as well. So, so thank you for all the help that people do, and thanks for all the new subscribers that came. So the last thing I wanted to do is, because I got 1,000 subscribers, and that was a goal of mine so I could mobile live stream, I thought something I would do kind of fun is, I thought that I would do a special video for 1,000 subscribers. So I have 4 options for the type of video that I might do. And we could number them and we could see what gets the most from here in Twitter. I told people on Twitter I'd take their input as well. But so option 1 would be, I believe my brother could back me up on this, I'm basically, in my local town, a karaoke champion. And so if it behooved people, I could celebrate by singing some sort of song on a video. That would be option 1. Option 2 would be that and this would be my wife's favorite, I'm thinking, I have some dogs that are some schmohawks that love playing around. So I could do a dog video where I'm just playing around. You guys could see how ridiculous my dogs are. So that would be option 2. Option 3, I could think of a topic that would give me the most angry, like 5-minute tirade, and go off on a 5-minute tirade or something on something to celebrate. And then the other option would just be anything else you guys could think of if you had any other suggestion. But whatever you guys think, if you'd want to, I guess, if you want me to do some sort of karaoke song, do a celebration with the dogs, go off on an angry tirade, or anything else, just for something fun, I thought it'd be for 1,000 subscribers, I would do that. And then maybe if I get to 10,000, we'd keep the theme going. I could do something else like that. But I hope you all enjoyed this. My schedule, for those of you who'll be interested, and I'm going to put this in my About section on my YouTube channel, is going to be as follows. Monday nights, I will either be streaming or just participating in the chat with the Patriot panel. That's going to be Doug Ducote, American Joe, SJG Perspective, Drone Tech, the Patriot Hour. That's the point with Brandon. And there's going to be other people that are getting involved with that, usually about 6 at a time. That will bounce from channel to channel. I will do my best. It's going to be, I think, every Monday night at 10. I'll do my best to be putting up what channel that will be on every Monday. So Monday nights at 10 p.m., all times Eastern. I will be doing a live stream by myself every Tuesday night at 11 p.m. I will be doing a live stream every Friday at noon. Again, all times Eastern. And then I'm trying to at least average a video a day, just a regular, like 6-7 minute video a day, one or more at least every weekday and hopefully most weekends as well. So that would be my choice. People are voting number 3, angry tirade. Oh, you want to meet Courtney? Yeah, I keep trying to get her to do a video. I'll get her on here at some point. She's not very political, but that's great. And here's the thing. I'll close with this, right? If you don't take anything else away from me, take this. You could be passionate, and you should be passionate about this stuff. I would love to do a video with Sticks, Hex, and Hammer Hugh. He's a big inspiration for what I do. I don't agree with him on everything, but his format, where he just basically talks and puts a bunch of videos out every day, I think he does a good job with it. I love doing this. I get fired up, but I am a happy person. I do think that we need to do a lot to help our country. I would love to do this full time, but I work, I have a job 78 hours a week. We'll see if I could grow and make this something that I could do more often and work less hours a week. But understand this. It's important that we talk to people that even disagree with us. And it's also important, one of the reasons I got into doing my show, you have no idea the incredible people that I live with, that I think are inspirations in my life. I happen to be blessed with, was book smart. I was a good debater. I'm a good talker, I guess. But to me, that stuff's not impressive. The people I find impressive are the ones that go out every day and they're welders or they're truck drivers or they're farmers. I suck at that stuff. And those are the people I see in my life that I'm impressed with. And you might be a person like that and you think, well, I don't have a lot to add to these type of conversations. That's not true. Just because you might not have experience in articulating it in a way that other people can, you matter, your voice matters. And that's one of the things I'm really trying to do with my shows, to get people that aren't really used to talking about politics, tell me their situation. You wouldn't believe the stories I hear talking to truck drivers and how these regulations screw them over. And this isn't big, grand conspiracy stuff, but just little things like, my father-in-law drives oversized loads. You would not believe the problems they have with permits, where they have to be permitted everywhere they go when they're driving these houses around. And just things like that where you can see where government intervention's causing all sorts of problems. So I think that that's really important. Yeah, John, I'll do some more showing my personal side and my job and stuff like that. I'll do a video. Maybe I'll do a video just with that, a live stream, just a Q&A on that stuff. But you out there, trust me, if you don't feel like doing videos, that's okay. Just talk to people in your lives about what you think would help make this country better, how to end this corruption, and talk to people that disagree with you too. Try to the best of your ability to be civil. Now look, if they take the gloves off and they want to be in civil, that's fine. We all have our style, right? Some people just want to be like, I don't want liberals on my show. That's cool. I happen to be someone, I like talking with them. I like having heated discussions, but we all have different styles. But I'm just encouraging you, try to go out there, have your own voice, do what you can. That's the beauty of our country. It's all based on the individual. We all have different specialties, and we should use those to try to make the country better. So whether it's you're going to Virginia and you're lending your voice there, you're helping homeless people in your street, you're volunteering, it's ironic to me. I hear all this talk of environmentalism. You know who the best environmentalists I know are? All of them are sportsmen and hunters, because they actually care about the environment. The people I hear talking about environmentalists are the ones I see throwing their garbage on the street. Some of these people. But and just so you know about one thing about me, I have plenty of friends that are left-leaning friends, plenty of friends that hate the fact that I support Donald Trump. So it's possible. It's possible to care about your country and have disagreements with people and, still make your point in an impassioned way, but be civil about it. So I hope that comes across from me. And thank you on the compliments on the paneling. I do need to get a new background, but yeah, I hope you could take that from me. And I hope you could always believe that I'll give my honest point of view, even if I know that, I criticize Trump for his deficit spending. I criticize him for Syria and the bombing there. I had questions about the killing of Soleimani. These aren't the best way to maybe get an audience of just people that are like, yeah, this guy's a Trump supporter. I am a Trump supporter. I think I'm one of the best spoken Trump supporters out there. I think at least better than the Republicans who have dropped the ball on this impeachment thing. But, yeah, that's where I'm at. So, yeah, please keep the patriots that are going to Virginia in your mind and hope that no violence occurs there. Hope that no outsiders are there to provoke people or things like that, and it goes smooth and it helps us defend our rights. So with that, thanks, Vincenta. Thank you. Thank you. I really do hope people like my channel. So be looking out. Like I said, I'll put that schedule up there for y'all, and I'll probably be doing some more videos as time goes on. But as you all know, on Fridays when I'm doing these videos, I have to clean the house a little before my wife comes home, or I will be in the doghouse tonight. So I got to get rolling. Thank you so much. You really have no idea. I'm humbled that so many people watch me today. I really am. I really have incredible respect for all of you, whether you agree or disagree with me. So I truly mean that. So thanks so much, and have a good one.